the legendary Hollywood director. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 926 Finale. Subscribe, vote. Although September and October have always been the off-season for the film market, it does not mean that the public is completely unconcerned about the various movements of theater operators. It can even be said that some works with relatively fixed audiences and relying on fans to pay for them are more suitable for operation in such a schedule without strong competitors, just like the Death Note 4 that broke out in late August and early September. This is also a typical fan-oriented movie. If you like to watch it, no matter what month it is released, as long as the news can be released, there will be fans who will buy it. If you don't like this kind of subject matter, no matter how popular the schedule is, he will not step into the theater. Of course, this does not mean that the schedule is not important. It is just a matter of choice. In the new week of October, the box office market in the deserted film market, which had previously declined rapidly after New Moon consumed a lot of potential, gradually became lively again. Hollywood, as the country with the strongest film atmosphere, is even more eager. This situation happened just as the theater owners, Firefly Pictures, Lionsgate, and the popular movie star Will Smith jointly announced on October 1st that I'm Legend has been scheduled to be released on October 16th in 46 regions including North America. You know, because of the special bonus of the name of the zombie trilogy that is about to be completely completed and the continuity of the background, as well as the quality of the series, it is still very popular. Although the starring team has a different trick, and the death of the male lead every time has caused some criticism from fans, and the degree of management of goodwill cannot be compared with those consistent and effective series creative teams. The plots of the first two parts are well shaped, and the length of the description of zombies, a fictional infected body, is more impressive than previous zombie works. And it has accumulated many fans. In this regard, it can be seen from the fact that the box office and copyright value of the second part have increased significantly compared to the first part, that this series has not been rejected by the audience. Furthermore, the final episode of a series usually inspires fans' desire to support it. This rule can be found from the Lord of the Rings series to the Matrix series. People will always make up for the spiritual enjoyment brought to them by the film. Many survey agencies know one thing: when a series is about to end, its audience will expand. Those viewers who have watched the feature films of the series from other channels such as DVDs and TV in the past will more or less become fans of the theater, to buy tickets to support it. This is also the so-called owning a movie ticket, but this slogan is not shouted out in the open, which is a very normal market behavior. Not to mention the announcement of the news, the publicity and promotion team led by Lyman invested a lot of money and vigorously placed advertisements with various advertising companies to heat up the momentum. Therefore, under such premeditated action regulation, I'm Legend naturally won a lot of attention, and fans were excited, but also melancholy that such a good work was about to end. But, all good things must come to an end. When The Lord of the Rings was finished, fans were reluctant to see it go, and the topic of starting The Hobbit was also mentioned. It also came to pass. In other words, the fans and audiences, with the feeling that there is no sequel, want to go to the theater to witness the end of this series in person. This also does not prevent them from reminiscing about the past movie watching online and speculating about what the third part will be about with great interest. For example, will Will Smith also live to the end like the protagonist of the first two parts? The plot is so bad, how will Zack Snyder arrange for the protagonist to die? This kind of discussion is also ridiculous, and some fans even went to Smith's Facebook to ask. And when the first trailer of the film was released on October 5th, a man and a dog walked on the lonely and empty streets. That sense of loneliness first set the tone for I'm Legend. Of course, the content and information shown in the trailer is quite limited, and the audience does not know what it will be about. Instead, their curiosity is aroused. After all, similar scenes look pretty cool. Who likes zombie movies has not imagined the feeling of freedom and ease when the end of the world comes? It can be said that this kind of fantasy fragment has touched the pulse of movie fans. Time passed in such anticipation day by day. When the ticket sales for the midnight show came, even though all parties were extremely optimistic about the market potential of I'm Legend, they were a little envious. As soon as the ticketing website started pre-sale, Fandango and Movie tickets crashed directly due to the large number of people visiting, and had to add new servers to relieve the pressure. In addition to some of the midnight show movie tickets released online, the regional theaters and other mainstream chain theater operators also failed to satisfy the enthusiasm of movie fans. New York, near Times Square. Entering this bustling business district from the main road, there are 6 or 7 cinemas densely releasing tickets, and 3 of them are offering tickets for I'm Legend. But even so, on the night of October 15th, the square, which was already crowded with people, ushered in a new force that temporarily gathered. They shouted and called, revealing a sense of sullenness and impatience on their faces. However, the tickets for several surrounding theaters were all sold out, which made the audience who came from all over to get a glimpse feel unhappy. But there is no way. There are only so many tickets for the midnight show, and Firefly can't arrange too many theaters to show it. After all, the share that the theater chain operators have agreed with them is also to guarantee that there will be 40-50 theaters and no less than 6,200 screens for the opening of the film tomorrow. There is no way, and they can only go to grab tickets tomorrow. The fans thought so, and they soon dispersed after understanding the situation. A little complaint is also the same for anyone who has been queuing for a long time and the tickets are sold out. Such a situation naturally spread quickly to the ears of people who were looking at it. An organization that specializes in research and information collection paid special attention to this. They often undertake questionnaire surveys on the audience market for film studios on weekdays and compile data. Tonight is no exception. At about 11 o'clock, a white man in his 30s drove a somewhat old Chevrolet to the side of the street and walked in with a bit of coldness on his face. In the office, a white man who looked older smiled and said, "You are in charge tonight." "Yeah." The man nodded and sat down to rest. Market research like this midnight show has always been a troublesome thing. Not to mention the night shift. They have to stay up late to extract data from the audience questionnaires and comments collected from various places and quickly report to the employer. It can be imagined that they will not have a good rest tonight. Have you heard? Most of the tickets for I'm Legend have been sold out, especially in those ticket-rich cities. It's hard to get them. A guy just called me to talk about this. I remember that this movie has 756 theaters scheduled, not including the premiere. Yes. Then tonight's performance will be very good. The performance is very good. Chapter 927 end. Please subscribe and vote. Inside the theater. Orchestral music like the breeze blew, and in the sound of a somewhat solemn melody, the realistic but desolate urban area, the scene of green vegetation covering the streets, constitutes a familiar yet unfamiliar New York. After several aerial shots, the camera gradually locked onto a room on a community floor, where a man in a white coat stood in front of a modified dissection table, and a male zombie was being fixed. Is the opening so heavy? Will is out. So handsome. Listening to the discussion of the audience around her, Bella also admired the camera movement and color beauty of this play in her heart. Director Zack Snyder is still strong. Although it was only a shot of less than 90 seconds at the beginning, there was no sign of a mature shooting processing. The fast connected plot accurately expressed the location and characters of the overall story without any wind, and went straight to the theme without giving people abruptness. This can give a glimpse of the director's personal skills and experience, as well as the control of the overall color tone. Moreover, this image style is slightly different from the first 2 films in the series, and is very quiet. 8 years ago, a sudden disaster swept the world. These horrible and irreversible mutants, after losing part of their 5 senses, became fearless of life and death, and became extremely violent and bloodthirsty, and could spread this unknown virus through the mutants. In 2020 AD New York fell, the number of infected bodies skyrocketed, the American regime was broken, and it could no longer control the situation. The narration sounded, and the male protagonist with a depressed look between his eyebrows sorted out a set of experimental data, recorded various values, and then took the notebook and wrote, "Today is another day without progress." After a large area of blood transfusion of the infected bodies, the mutations are still irreversible. I don't know where the direction of success is. The male protagonist, that is, Will Smith's nephew, quickly explained his background with a few shots. From some shots that cut back to the clips of New York trip, it can be seen that he also survived by chance after witnessing all this, hoping to rely on what he has learned to study away, to crack the infection frenzy. To this end, he did not hesitate to search for supplies to maintain his life while actively ambushing lone zombies. But, after so long, he got nothing. Of course, it was not nothing. He knew more about the infected body, but he had no idea how to restore it to normal. One night passed. Nafe opened his eyes painfully. Every time he woke up, he had to face the hard days. Fortunately, Sam seemed to be able to sense his emotions. This big dog who had been with him for a long time licked Nafe's palm to comfort him. Nafe touched the dog's head, and both the man and the dog felt relieved. Every morning, it was the usual physical training. There were 2 treadmills, and both the man and the dog did not fall behind. After eating a simple breakfast, Nafe drove a red supercar in the deserted city. The rumbling sound of the engine resounded in New York, as if it brought a touch of popularity. Since the zombie group broke through New York, there has been no large wave of zombies in the city, and some zombies scattered everywhere could not threaten Nafe. He had already known this area thoroughly, and could even mark the number of zombies in each district according to the appearance of the zombies following the sound, and meet them reasonably. In this way, Nafe took Sam to shuttle quickly between cities, searching for supplies, while patrolling his territory. However, the freedom from worries that the audience felt very involved in was the biggest obstacle in Nafe's heart. After all, humans are social animals, but in all these years, Nafe has not seen a second living person, and he has been dealing with zombies. If these infected bodies are not provoked, they will wander around slowly and have little wisdom. At least they will not enter the community where Nafe lives, which is marked out as a safe zone by a large number of roadblocks and groceries. This is the cleanest place. The only trouble is that when he needs to enter, he has to take out the gasoline or alcohol in the car to cover up the smell, especially the smell of blood. At night, after filling his stomach with canned meals, Nafe muttered to himself, gave Sam a hot bath, and then survived another night. A new day. In order to relieve loneliness from time to time, Nafe went to the audiovisual store in the community. Every time he went there, he would greet the mannequins in the store seriously and pretend to be shy when flipping through some adult DVDs. He lives alone, climbs up to admire the sunrise, sends telegrams alone, expects someone to reply, watches movies alone, eats canned food. He has developed the habit of talking to himself, and even deliberately shows that he is not living alone here, looking for some funny coexistence. From the audience's perspective, even those who don't want to watch movies with their brains can feel that this is a very stupid self-hypnosis. In an instant, the atmosphere of the whole film is not so relaxed. The more free the male protagonist is, the more he feels an indescribable sense of loneliness. Such emotional foreshadowing, but there is no sense of disobedience, also makes Bella's attention more focused. She understands that such a sense of plot drama is not enough. Sure enough, the subsequent evolution of the infected body is really the most appropriate conflict and contrast. Nafe still shuttles between cities every day, and still seizes the opportunity to continue his research, but he feels that the stupid infected body of the past is gradually becoming different. Nafe looked into Sam's eyes. Frowning, Bella felt that the movie was becoming more and more interesting. The director used storyboards to explain Nafe's research progress and the zombies' gradually contrasting behaviors. In addition, the male protagonist's narration kept pushing the rhythm, which also added a sense of urgency to the movie. This day was like usual. Nafe took Sam to wander in the deserted city like a ghost, but Nafe felt uneasy, as if a stone was pressing on his heart. A few days ago, when he ambushed a lone female zombie, he found that it did not rush up fearlessly, but hesitated, which had never happened when he set traps to seduce. Nafe repeatedly told himself that it was just an individual case, and there must be other unexpected factors that day, even though his mind was proving that it was really a very ordinary and effective seduction ambush that day, and the zombies showed unexpected behavior. Near the afternoon, a man and a dog walked on the quiet street. Suddenly, Nefer saw another lone zombie, and was about to check the terrain, appease the dog, and prepare to create an opportunity. He casually threw out an empty can to attract the zombie's attention, but found that the zombie only glanced at him, paused for a moment, and continued to move forward. The zombie did not turn around, nor did it come over. This is impossible, absolutely impossible. Nefer held the gun in disbelief. His psychological defense line collapsed, and he could not help but follow up without following his previous ambush habits. At this moment, Nefer, who had been suppressed for many years, experienced human resistance and failure, and the formation and departure of the zombie tide, still had hope, and all kinds of complex emotions attacked his brain like a volcanic eruption. He lost his composure, and he also made a fatal mistake, which was to rashly leave his comfort zone and come to a strange area he rarely set foot in. Soon, the threatening signal from the dog's throat finally made Nefer realize something. Turning around, he saw that, before he knew it, 20 or 30 zombies had surrounded him. Nefer raised his gun in panic and pulled the trigger frantically. Under the desolate background music, the man and the dog were in a stalemate. At the most critical moment, Sam was entangled with a zombie that jumped from behind the car so that Nefer could free up his hands to deal with the remaining zombies first. In the end, Sam was dying, and Nefer's closest family and reliable comrade in arms were lying on the operating table with bruises all over their bodies. The dog's consciousness became more and more blurred, and his pupils gradually became dull. Nefer hugged Sam tightly, humming a lullaby, and sent it away personally, before it was about to mutate. The theater became quiet, and some of the actors who were immersed in the play and emotionally sensitive had already had red eyes. From then on, Nefer's pillar of survival in this city was gone forever. On a desperate day, he rushed into the battle array like a madman and died. Chapter 928 October Record. Subscriptions. Vote. October 18th was the third day of the climax of the final chapter of the zombie trilogy. Since I'm Legend opened with excellent midnight performance, 19.8 million box office, single theater up to $26,000. Hungry audiences, like the zombies in the film, divided the film and ate it, and raised the North American film market to a height that could not be reached in October in the past. The total cumulative Top 12, 153 million, up 32.6% from the same period last year. That night, a good-looking, plump black woman was talking to her bestie, trying to suppress some joy in her conversation. After a while, the conversation ended with some boasting. The woman looked at the time and hurriedly asked the driver to drive to a luxurious manor. On the way, she also reported the itinerary to others. At the door of the manor, she saw a familiar figure walking out, and a smile suddenly appeared on her face. "Will." The woman walked quickly, but the man just looked at her dress, nodded, and let her hold his arm naturally. The intimacy between the two, the greetings from others, and the woman's attitude as a hostess. This person is naturally Smith's wife Jada Smith, who sleeps with him in the same bed. Speaking of which, this person is also a multitasking celebrity who has developed in music and acting. Since her debut in 1990, she has accumulated a lot of experience, not to mention how high her status is in the circle. Before she met Smith, she played supporting roles for several years, and made her mark in the TV circle with a hit drama. At that time, Smith was not very popular. Jada formed a band by herself, and met him by chance at a performance. She also married Smith soon. For the sake of marriage and family, Jada's acting career soon entered a semi-retired state, and the impression she left on the public was only the label of Smith's wife. But after so many years in this industry, Jada's vision and wealth-based financial management methods are rarely mentioned. She has been the agent of Smith's clothing brand, and is also the actual controller of the Will and Jada Smith Family Foundation, responsible for Smith's charitable funds, basically doing the work of a personal agent. Recently, with the hot screening of I'm Legend, Smith's traffic has skyrocketed. With this favorable wind, he can make a lot of money from other aspects. After all, this couple is a rare representative in the circle, who has not been dazzled by the spotlight of Hollywood. It is so easy to make money, and they are also actively developing side businesses. The key is that they are doing a good job. The two entered the gate of the manor. At the celebration party in the form of a buffet, a group of executives from Lionsgate and Blue Butterfly were very close to the heroes. When it was late at night, Jada, who didn't drink much, got in the car and looked at the time. While serving Smith, who was a little drunk, and helping him sort out his schedule, she waited for more specific news. Although I'm Legend has a good performance, we always have to look at the first week box office and market feedback to speculate on the subsequent direction. After all, this movie is strictly speaking also benefited from the first two parts. Because of the characters, the plot of the finale is not wide, which is a shortcoming that can be easily seen why it is difficult for a one-man show to be outstanding is that there are no characters to set off, and it is difficult to unfold the role. She asked her peers for their opinions and, based on the information provided by the audience and rating agencies, she confirmed and analyzed that I'm Legend could not be screened for a long time, and the screening curve was even steeper than Travel to New York and I'm a Hero. It started high and fell quickly. In other words, if it cannot reach a peak value in the early stage, the subsequent market does not have to expect a rebound to surprise people. If it goes wrong, the return rate will not be better than the previous two films, which would be embarrassing. If this is true, there will definitely be media leading the rhythm, saying that Smith's appeal has declined and disappointed fans. Thinking about this, I still have some doubts. Well, your agent just called, and I wrote down some arrangements for you. Jada took out the booklet she carried with her, and helped Smith get up from her lap and sit down. Smith is still very dedicated. Even though he is a big star in the 20 million club, he rarely has a temper, and violates the contract, and does not go to the platform for promotion. However, there are indeed many things to do during the movie screening, such as the FX TV program recording at 10 AM, the road shows in several regions at 12 noon, and the flight to New York at 3 PM, to attend a show of the sponsor Omega. In the evening, he also has to be a guest on a radio station. Have you coordinated the schedule? Smith was not surprised by such a busy schedule, because he also participated in various activities today and basically did not rest. Yeah. With Jada's reply, the car suddenly became quiet, but it was broken by the vibration of the phone not long after. It's Jason's call. Smith handed it to his wife. Please answer it for me. I guess today's box office is out. The time was about 50 minutes past midnight. In the internet age, the box office does not need to be manually calculated, and it is indeed much faster. Hello. Jada is Smith's bedmate, so Jason is not shy about anything. He talked about the gains of I'm Legend today, the first week box office, market feedback, and subsequent trend estimates. What is surprising is that the film earned $24.47 million on the third day with a very slight drop, $19.8 million for 3 days plus midnight screenings, and a total of $98.45 million in the first week, an average score of nearly 20,000. Which once again excited the film market. And such a result is also very good for Smith himself. That is, it proves that he can play all types of films. Science fiction I, Robot, romantic comedy Full Name Rival, action Bad Boys, drama Art The Pursuit of Happiness, 3D animation Shark Tale, plus the disaster wasteland I'm Legend. In other words, Will Smith has once again consolidated his position as the new generation of box office king. After the big sale of Hancock, another work to compete with the tripod was born, and it was thoroughly demonstrated, a one-man show without other stars co-starring, which means that no one is competing with him. It's okay to have a lot of room for development and a lot of shots. Once successful, only he can enjoy the benefits of acting. The only flaw may be that the disadvantage of not being able to maintain a long-term line has begun to appear. After a large number of passers-by entered the theater, the reputation of the film declined. Rotten Tomatoes only gave it a 72% freshness, Yahoo gave it a B+, and the media's comprehensive review was only slightly higher than passing, with a score of 64. It was nothing more than the plot was not very watchable. Even though it had a big wave in the first week, and ranked first in the October schedule, the media and film critics did not buy it, but the fans were quite supportive. Jada herself knew that Smith's skin color helped his career a lot, and the black ethnic group would definitely like to see a familiar face on the big screen. But once the black bonus is eaten up, and the fan market is almost consumed, it is afraid that it will not go too far with such a reputation. However, this was beyond Jada's expectations. A zombie movie that made nearly 100 million in the first week is simply a miracle, comparable to the unreasonable gamma play of the Twilight series. According to this momentum, 600 million should be stable, and it depends on whether it can break the 700 million mark. After all, no matter how you analyze it, you have to take into account the strong topic of the upcoming end of the zombie trilogy. In addition, there are no threats during the schedule, and no blockbusters to grab the box office, so the audience actually doesn't have many choices. Chapter 929, filling the gap. Please subscribe, vote. The audience really doesn't have much choice. Right now, I'm Legend has won the championship and ranks first on the list, naturally attracting a lot of attention, and it has a big gap with other works. For example, Resort of Couples, the only new film to be released on a large scale during the period, only won $35.34 million in the first weekend box office in 3,000 theaters, and the average data per theater was close to $11,800. Universal Studios, which did not make much money from traditional comedy in the summer, even made a lot of money after entering late autumn. The theme of warm, romantic, and spoof comedy does not overlap with the audience of I'm Legend, but it can't touch the tail of the first place at all. Later, even if Resort of Couples maintains its consistent box office performance and declines very little, it will be difficult for I'm Legend to regress to less than $35 million in 3 days of the weekend. The risk in this regard is almost non-existent. In the next week, as expected, I'm Legend was not threatened by anyone and continued to reap the fan market that it deserved and had been operating for several years. The only thing that made Firefly feel regretful was that the derivative market of the film was as difficult to develop as ever. For zombie movies, movie ticket support is support, but it is unlikely to get fans to spend more money. After all, this type of subject matter is not a mature channel business project. The bulk of the money is only in the film output itself, and there is not much to do. But apart from this shortcoming, that is not a shortcoming, the cooperative stakeholders are staring at the profits on hand and eating happily. In the meeting room of Marvel Entertainment, a derivative cooperation plan for Iron Man 2 is being held. Channel dealers and some cooperative manufacturers have rushed over after receiving the invitation. These days, the global toy market is getting bigger and bigger, and cross-selling and outsourcing are very mainstream phenomena in the industry. As a brand that can no longer be ignored in the licensing market, Marvel has become more and more prosperous in image derivatives, and the capital it relies on is even stronger. Although it is essentially a cake sharing, the profit rises quickly, and each has its own needs. In front of a projection screen, as David Mazur excitedly pointed out, the revenue from the derivative products of the first Iron Man movie, and based on the popularity growth of Robert Downey Jr., he expected that the profit space of the sequel market would reach new heights. The audience, including a vice president of Hasbro and executives of Hot Toys, applauded. They had analyzed the financial prospects of the project, and they were not worried about not making money from the cooperation. When they thought it was just a formality, David changed the subject. The main selling point of Iron Man 2 is naturally the protagonist Tony Stark and his new armor, but in this one, we also added a new character. His tone was a little relaxed. You are all industry veterans. I believe that by promoting it, we can also make money and develop a new way to make money. Everyone looked at each other and became interested. You know, up to now, the average profit of the 3 grades of Iron Man's licensed products, low, medium and high, is very considerable. Take Hot Toys as an example. They sell them at a high price. After deducting the cost and the money that Marvel should get, they can earn $32 for each one. In the business of the first Iron Man, they produced and released 525,000 pieces, with a net profit of $16.8 million, and the sales performance is very gratifying. Therefore, if there is a good source of income, it is of course better. Besides Iron Man, what else can be operated and distributed? Hasbro's people were curious for a long time, and couldn't help asking. David didn't keep it a secret. Although Iron Man 2 was just finished and entered the post-production stage not long ago, and there is still a long time before it is released, it does not prevent the work from being started early. After all, in terms of promotion and marketing, channel dealers are definitely a great help. She is a new character, set to be an excellent Soviet spy on the projection screen. The information about Black Widow and Scarlett Johansson's Makute poster basically fully introduced the image promotion space. There are many successful cases of male superheroes in the market, and they sell the best. As a gender supplement, female superheroes definitely have development value. I know your concerns. For example, Warner once wanted to develop Catwoman and invited Halle Berry to play the role to boost popularity, but it failed. But we are different. Our idea is to use Iron Man, a character that has been formed and on the right track, to leverage the image of Black Widow. To be precise, a character that takes the sexy route can be liked by some audiences, and it meets the needs in this direction. After all, Marvel's audience ranges mostly between the ages of 14 and 20, accounting for about 53%. This group of people is in a stage of restlessness. You can imagine how tempting the identity of an nimble agent beauty is. Even if there is only a 1 in 10 conversion rate, we can try marketing development and slowly expand it. These principles and the idea of filling the gap in the market are of course correct. After thinking about it, everyone also feels that it is more reliable, at least using Iron Man's popularity to promote new characters is much more reliable than Catwoman. Let's talk about the distribution conditions. We are willing to take over the Black Widow's derivative business. Once Hasbro's people expressed their opinions, other distributors followed suit. In fact, the general terms are the same. The only difference is the level of release and the number of types. David Mazur was very satisfied with the performance of these partners. For the various figures, toys, and some small gadgets with Marvel element, in terms of shipment preparation, I hope you can spare some production lines before next summer to give priority to docking. Don't worry, we will definitely guarantee the supply. The representatives of the manufacturer supported it, and they were very clear in their hearts, because many of their company's core businesses are self-developed projects, such as Hasbro's G.I. Joe series based on Transformers. In terms of the degree of dependence, the distance between the two parties is more different, and Marvel is also actively building its own manufacturing and sales network, so it is very necessary to have a contract to guarantee the supply basis. Our company is still responsible for the production of these two models. For Black Widow, 300,000 units should be enough in advance. Well, we have to see how much potential there is. If it sells well, we will definitely place an order as soon as possible. Just as the parties were deciding their shares based on their size and previous cooperation terms, there was new movement from the brand that Joe Quaddle, president of Marvel Entertainment, was in charge of contacting. That day, he reported to Lyman, "Boss, 27 companies have reached brand linkage agreements with us, and the amount received is about 43 million. Lyman took the report and saw that as Marvel grew bigger, the giants in the daily chemical field did not hesitate to spend money on patch promotion. You can arrange it as you see fit. It's better to have less than enough. Find more big brands with positive image and audience. Boss, that's a good idea. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 930, Unwilling to be Lonely. Please subscribe and vote. In the next few days, I'm Legend still maintained good competitiveness in the North American film market. After 2 consecutive championships, Marvel executives were unwilling to be lonely and ran around, and the preparations for Iron Man 2 were also carried out in an orderly manner. Among them, the cake of the clothing market cannot be missed. Just as Lyman envisioned and put into action, the benefits of the labor asset layout of the financial resources to the mainland soon emerged. From fabric cutting to whole body OEM, the OEM network established in sequence, in terms of technology and cost, is very consistent with Marvel's current needs. Anyway, with the textile scale in Zhejiang, Anhui and other places, Marvel's volume is exported, which is extremely convenient. Like the clothing industry in the United States, it basically invests energy in the two links of design and sales, and the production orders are also sent to overseas areas, where labor is relatively cheap. In addition, Marvel's positioning is mainly students and targets the low-end and medium-end leisure market. Lyman never thought of doing it in a big way from the beginning. According to the development plan formulated, based on the purchasing potential of Marvel brand consumers, these casual styles designed with superhero element to distinguish the same market have limited consumption levels of the audience. Neither the volume nor the high-end route is feasible. Costs are compressed, pricing is reasonable, there is a certain profit margin, and it can expand the consumption needs of fans and satisfy their daily vanity. In other words, it is just selling a brand, which is similar to Columbia's choice to expand Spider-Man's profit source, brand premium. Many industries are using it, and the process is much easier to establish a system from bottom to top. After the first batch of OEM samples arrived in the United States, the management of the clothing department poached by Marvel Entertainment also felt that they could gain a foothold in the lower middle market. The fabric grade is the same as various casual clothes on the market, but the use of superhero elements such as Q version and Avatar version designed by Marvel is the core selling point. Is Marvel's clothes just the clothes themselves? No, this is a gift given to fans outside the box office market. It is not expensive, comfortable, and printed with their favorite characters. In this regard, Lyman also lamented that the big IP entertainment market, chain-like marketing, and multifaceted benefits are all unmatched by many independent films. No wonder the degree of attention has been gradually reduced. As for Marvel, the upper limit is far from being reached, and it is not a top case on the IP list. Pokémon is the most profitable now. Throughout the end of October, Marvel spent even more effort than I'm Legend. For them, this kind of project, which concerns the overall situation, and is the end of the first stage of preparation, is not a project that can be relaxed. They have to contact partners everywhere, consider all aspects of publicity and promotion, communicate with theaters, and build a distribution system with Warner. The workload is indeed not small. During this period, Jason Reitman, who had worked with Firefly once, also came to visit specially. This guy was very comfortable because of the filming of Juno and the sharing of the revenue after the release. It was also a good project discovered by his studio. It can try theater distribution, but its financial resources cannot be fully bet, and it needs to retain a certain risk resistance. Brought a director here, and the person is still Egyptian. After the project approval review, the film is a thriller-style drama. The script depicts a nervous female doctor who suspects her husband of having an affair outside, and then hires a beautiful woman to test her husband's loyalty, which makes the family relationship more tense. The title clue is not heard of much. However, Lyman saw that the budget was not high and the director Atomy Gohan himself had enough experience on the set, so he agreed to invest and count it as one of the sources for next year's production. Anyway, adding one more project is also a good thing for the distribution department. At least it will be more comfortable in terms of operation. For Atomy Gohan, Jason Reitman is the producer of this project, and his close relationship with Firefly is also a pleasant surprise. With their help, there is no need to worry about production and distribution. Jason said happily, because the film has a total budget of $9.5 million, and his studio is responsible for $3 million of it, which is the second investor. After Red Dragonfly Capital became the first shareholder of Riot, the internet giant Penguin on the other side of the Pacific Ocean soon got the news. However, because this game has not yet shown the results it should have, it is like someone picked peaches in the training stage. After a period of time, as the investigation was improved, Penguin's game department analyzed, and they did not understand why a film company would start with League of Legends, nor could they make up their minds how much capital to compete. After all, at this time, the dominant player in the MOBA game field that attracted a lot of attention was Dota, and the orthodox sequel of Dota was also under development. League of Legends was just Penguin's search for a substitute in this field, just like operating CF, when CS could not be obtained. However, although Penguin did not know why a film company would take a fancy to the product they had laid out, and the investment strength seemed so confident, they still planned to test Red Dragonfly's attitude first to see what the other party planned. In a way, they thought so, and fell into Lyman's trap, because he originally needed Penguin's channels and investment strength. Moreover, even if Penguin didn't come to him, he would ask Virginio Reynolds to visit him and talk about the competition area and the competition system. He hoped that in the first S-League, there would be competition among at least 4 regions: China, South Korea, Europe and the United States. Otherwise, it would be too frivolous and difficult to create momentum and stir up the atmosphere. Therefore, after receiving Penguin's request for a meeting, Lyman no longer beat around the bush and directly asked Virginio to set a date and call all the agents who had been notified to discuss it together. It can be said that, if this game wants to reach the height of the previous life, or even exceed it, it depends largely on these powerful agents. Otherwise, relying on a team of less than 70 people, they would not be able to handle many things in addition to being responsible for the game content and version heroes. Promotion, resources, energy, and financial resources all need to be invested first before there will be output. Moreover, it is a multiplayer online tactical game across regions. The gap in the early stage is very large, and it is also inseparable from agents. Just talking about the Chinese localization, it also takes time and requires some understanding of Chinese culture. It is impossible for you to ask American manufacturers to do it. Boss, are you going to the party tomorrow? Just as Lyman was secretly thinking about his plan, Virginio returned to Los Angeles to report the results of the operation. Everyone was still very respectful, mainly because many people were optimistic about the future of this game. Of course. Mace, help me arrange the itinerary. Chapter 931 details, subscriptions, votes. When Lyman arrived at Riot's headquarters, more than a dozen people had already come to the carefully decorated conference room. Some of them represented Penguin, some were from Taiwan, Japan, and some were from South Korea. However, at this time and place, they all had one thing in common, that is, they were optimistic about the agents who came to League of Legends. The conference room was relatively quiet. Most of the managers of these game manufacturers just stood in their own camp and thought about something. Occasionally, they communicated, and they were all familiar people who greeted each other softly. This situation was not until Lyman and Ryan followed Brandon, one of the founders of Riot, into the scene, that it became a little more lively. During the courtesy, Lyman was also cordial. After all, strictly speaking, Red Dragonfly was just a junior in the game industry. Although it was rich and powerful, and it also occupied the home field advantage, in order to reach a cooperation as soon as possible, it had no capital to neglect. After everyone sat down, Lyman first said with a smile, "We all know each other now. In recent days, I believe you will understand why we are meeting today." Hearing the words of Riot's first shareholder, an executive of Ghana Capital in Southeast Asia, including Taiwan, couldn't wait to say, "If it is an agency matter, after the contact that day, we have a newer understanding of some of the terms. If the conditions are like this, 20 million RMB for 3 years, and 15% profit share, then we can finalize it now." As soon as the Ghanaian executive finished speaking, agents from other regions also echoed, 80 million Korean won for 3 years, and 13% profit share. We can offer 20 million reais, 3 years of agency rights, and 14% profit share. One after another, the two leaders of Riot were secretly happy. In a short moment, they had received more than $7 million in agency fees. Although this money is nothing to Riot now, and it is a drop in the bucket for these agents, it can be seen that they recognize the game League of Legends. However, seeing such a tacit understanding, Lyman felt that these people were slippery. After all, this gathering, in addition to reaching a consensus on ideas and strategies, also meant to raise prices. The agents also understood this very well. They directly quoted their prices first, and seemed to have really thought about it for a long time, and each of them added a little on the original basis. Unfortunately, the devil is 1 foot high and the road is 10 feet high. Things must be done according to their own procedures. Lyman pretended not to understand. "Everyone, these can be discussed later." Then, at Lyman's signal, Virginio went on stage and used a projector to demonstrate the game operation system, which is not yet mature and not taken seriously by many manufacturers. For example, NetEase was scolded by core players for holding a competition. Such a thankless task is also why many large manufacturers do not like to engage in these fancy things. Everyone, let me talk about some of our ideas about regional operations first. As for the agency rights, after reading these, I believe everyone will have a better estimation standard. Hearing the word ideas, many manufacturers, out of trading instinct, looked a little more vigilant. The basis of cooperation is recognition. No matter how outrageous the conditions are, they will be met, as long as someone is willing. How can there be any specific standards? It is just a euphemism for a willing fight or a demand, to actively promote the transaction. Virginio's words made the manufacturers see the latter possibility, demand, and secretly wondered if Riot wanted to intervene in regional management and the right to speak was not independent enough. This is more troublesome than simply asking for money. Looking at their emotional alertness, Lyman naturally felt it, but there was no need to explain, because the following content is beneficial to them, the stacker holders who hope to produce something from League of Legends. Virginio also laid the groundwork for the opening, for a multiplayer online game, how to avoid content duplication, improve playability, and enhance the life of the cycle has always been a question worth pondering. In other words, how to make players rely on a certain game, and rely more deeply on it, so that it will not enter the stage of decline and elimination after 3 or 2 years of popularity. I believe everyone here has an understanding. In order to solve these problems, we pondered and repeatedly discussed with the development team of Riot, and finally came up with some operational methods. In fact, in summary, in one sentence, make the game closer to competition. Create a stage, and make players feel more involved and belonging. In this regard, we can refer to the NBA. Of course, most people who love basketball do not have the talent and conditions to stand on the court, but it does not prevent them from supporting it outside the court. The same is true for League of Legends. It is a game and a pastime in itself. If the combination of hero selection and version changes are used, the attributes of the competitive direction can be deepened. In essence, we need to get closer, because sports and entertainment are the consumption hotspots of contemporary young people. Everyone, please see. On the projected screen, the words association and club were covered by large blue circles. In our vision, in each region, an agent and Riot will jointly establish a competitive association. In terms of relationship, each club is an independent legal person around this game and an independently operated company. The association does not directly participate in the management of the club. The club is responsible for its own profits and losses, and is freely transferred. Referees cannot leave the field. The work of the association is to organize, promote, and operate competitions, and handle public affairs between clubs and players. Clubs that want to join the system need to pay management fees to the association. That's all. In short, the two sides have different operating systems. The club's public affairs and operating income are broadcasting fees, sales of League of Legends regional logo products, development of the competition system. For example, Riot does not care about the money from sponsors and some promotional activities. Among them, most of the association's income will also be used to pay for the construction of venues, broadcasting technology, and the salaries of event-related personnel, directors, hosts, commentators. If there is any surplus, it will be distributed in proportion, and will not be counted in the profit of the game itself. This is to ensure that manufacturers have enough benefits to develop and maintain the competition system. Of course, due to the differences in economic strength and game market capacity in each region, specific standards are customized, but it is highly likely that they will not go beyond the concept. This is a very complete event plan with room for implementation, and more than one person thinks so. Youth training camps, player transfers, salary caps, free agents and player exchanges, competition rules and feasibility marketing, and the use of internationalization strategies to go global. After counting out the rules, it took only half an hour for ZHU Zengrong, general manager of the cooperative marketing department of Penguin Interactive Entertainment, to nod his head, a little excited. Obviously, many words touched his heart. But the more this happened, the more he regretted not taking down Riot earlier. miscalculated, he sighed in his heart, and also lamented that a team of a film company actually knew so much about game events and had a clear concept, as if they were born to do this job. It originated from the home and away system of S7 and constantly summarized and improved the business operation. Others crossed the river by feeling the stones, but this side went ashore directly, which is of course very feasible. On the stage, after the PPT was finished, Virginio looked at the boss's praise, suppressed his excitement, and looked at the executives of the two agents, Nixoft and Barner, who were a little out of control. Maybe they were calculating how to bid to get the regional agency. After all, smart people can see that under the competition system, part of the extra revenue of the game is in their hands. And just as Lemon thought, it would be fine if they didn't know the goal. If they knew such a layout, it would be difficult for these people not to be affected by the chips they had already decided in their hearts. Lemon could even understand their entanglement, even if no one believed that the NBA, which Virginio planned to target, could reach such a height, but the pie drawn in this way was still delicious and tempting. Think about it, a game with strong competitiveness, low entry barriers, high operation ceiling, and relatively rich game content, heroes, and versions. So many advantages are combined through the competition system. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. What kind of energy can be unleashed is indeed worth looking forward to. Chapter 932, Turning Around. Please subscribe and vote. How much profit can a mature event brand make in this era? Even if we don't compare it with traditional sports giants, taking the case of the arcade era as an example, in addition to the premise of extending the life of the game, it will also feed back to the growth of sales, influence, and audience base. In addition, League of Legends is an online game. The more players there are, the higher the profit. Any decision that can improve this aspect is a very cost-effective deal. The world is bustling, all for profit, and the world is bustling, all for profit. Seeing Virginio's summary, combined with the hotspots of the game market itself, thinking that after the partnership, it can not only increase the coverage of the regional audience and enhance competitiveness, but also not be cheap to other peers. No matter what, you have to soften your attitude and increase your investment. However, compared with the gradually firm determination of China and South Korea, some agents with low output value can't help but murmur in their hearts. But at this time, Lemon took out another topic: content for the club. Games, how to make achievements, while attracting people with real capital to join. The ability to burn money, spend resources, spend energy and time to water, but make wedding clothes for others is also very important. In other words, the positioning of customers and target groups. The first is to attract those rich second generations who love to play and are willing to spend money on games to get satisfaction, because for these people, spending hundreds of millions is not a big deal and they are prone to impulsive investment. With this group of people as a foundation, we can win over those brands that have needs, such as those that target young people or need a young label to increase players' favorability towards the brand. However, one thing that must be pointed out is that the most beneficial and relatively optimistic return rate of this competition system belongs to agents and Riot. The profit of inviting other capital to establish a game club is not that big for the capital itself. On the contrary, it pays more. So it must be made clear that the role of the club is to shape the brand, deepen the label, and use traffic to achieve the improvement of the business map. A very objective example is to drive the threshold, such as Anta's victory over the men's basketball team, threatening Leaning's status as a national sports brand. Nike's operation of the NBA, especially the binding with Jordan, directly drove away Adidas, the big brother of sports brands at the time. The transformation of the consumer market is sometimes due to these subtle labels, which is very unreasonable. Because in this process, whether it was Leaning, which had the largest market share of domestic brands at the time, or the giant Adidas, their arrangements were not wrong. In order to strengthen the brand, they invested even more money in advertising, but they just didn't win. In other words, they wanted to impress the investors and gain the favor of those people. It can be pointed out that in the game market, the conversion rate of branding can be close to that of competitive sports. Then, as the player base increases, it will be easier to bundle. And this deliberate and precisely positioned gorgeous marketing promotion is another gift from Lemon to the manufacturers. If they can really seize the opportunity to implement it, the prosperity of the event system will almost have 2 more points of confidence, coordinating the forces of all parties, and determining the unity of business strategies. Now, the chips of our side have been put on the table, waiting for these agents to pay the matching chips. Lyman thought so, and saw Virginio still working hard to tell the various benefits of cooperation. He picked a pause, coughed lightly, took over the topic and slowly asked, "Everyone, if there is anything that is not comprehensive, you can raise it?" Lyman's words were like a drop of cold water falling into boiling oil, and the scene suddenly became lively again. Even if these agents had some concerns, they were gradually dispelled by such a detailed plan, and they were no longer reserved at the beginning. When such a situation appeared, it was much easier to talk about it. Doing business is always changing. Even if the investment is increased according to the strategy, the interesting thing about the market is that there is no return without effort, and there is no ratio. For this, you only need to calculate the pros and cons, and whether you are willing or not, which is what you focus on most of the time. It is obvious that the agents' gradually enthusiastic hearts make them feel that such cooperation is desirable. Lyman nodded with some satisfaction. You will understand that this plan requires a lot of investment to implement, and there will be returns, but that is a matter for the future. As for us, we are not here to unify our thinking with you with the idea of only one company benefiting. If there is no interest support, how can you spare the energy to run the business well? That must be inconsistent with our original intention. After laying the groundwork with some good words, a group of agents heard Lyman say again, "However, it would not be right to damage Riot's interests too much. How about this? For a period of 3 years, try to set conditions according to regional market share, and both parties have to be satisfied." The executives of Microsoft were the first to agree. "Don't worry, you won't have to worry about the operation of the Korean region when it is handed over to us. We will definitely develop it properly. The Korean game market is still a rich cake, and Microsoft does not intend to continue to quibble so as not to miss opportunities due to too much wrangling." Okay. The result of the negotiation was that, in order to be the agent of Riot's game, Microsoft spent 160 million won, and 15% of the regional profit share. Banner also expanded to the Taiwan and Southeast Asian regions, paying a total of 23 million RMB, with a 20% regional profit share. The remaining Japanese, South American, Oceania and other regions without an online game audience base were divided according to the method of less cash and high profit sharing threshold. Lyman considered it very carefully. Since the upper limit of the profit is not comparable to many populous countries, he would reduce the burden of the capital chain and transfer the profit that can be developed. In this way, they can also not willingly, while those regional big companies would definitely rather pay more agency fees than share too much, which is exactly the opposite. In this, the people of Penguin have been watching, because they have long been the only agent in the mainland, and they are the second largest shareholder. But as the transactions were completed one after another, they were not idle either, and soon called higher level people to fight for authority. What authority? Penguin used the same old trick. Buy, increase the shareholding ratio, or even take over all and operate exclusively. When the funds available were sufficient, Penguin did not delay, and directly showed its intentions, being enthusiastic and approachable. So, things fell to Lyman's third calculation, cashing out part of the money and leaving. Although he had drawn a big pie before, if Red Dragonfly really wanted to complete the idea, it would require a huge amount of resources, not to mention the game field, where Red Dragonfly had no matching launch window at all. Take Penguin for example. After the launch of the League of Legends National Service, it was absolutely treated like a son. So, after listening to Penguin's sincere suggestion on who would make the cake bigger, Lyman pondered for a moment, and was soon convinced. Chapter 933. Let Zion subscribe, vote. 3 days later, the matter was settled. On the way back to Firefly Pictures, Lyman sat in the back seat of the car, and Ryan was beside him. Only Virginio was left to continue communicating with Riot and to be responsible for the establishment of the next competition system. Not long after, Lyman, who was a little absent-minded, Heard Ryan's question with some confusion. Man, you are so optimistic about League of Legends. Why do you want to transfer a large number of shares to Penguin? If it is just to cash out and replenish funds, we don't lack this money now. Obviously, during the negotiation process, Ryan had been patient for a long time, but he always believed in Lemon and did not express doubts in the middle. After all, it seems that Lemon has spent a lot of effort on this layout. Such a detailed conception is not made in one go, but he turned around and gave the dominance of the business to others? Huh? Black question mark JPG. Lemon shook his head and put his hand on Ryan's shoulder. You still have a lot to learn about this. Games are just like movies. The content being accepted by the audience is just a prerequisite. It is also very important to cling to the thighs. Let's put it this way. If League of Legends wants to be truly developed according to my idea, funds are secondary. It also requires sufficient delivery capabilities for a wide range of game players, and even requires rich connections. If it is limited to one US server, we can handle it, but how to get the copyright number for Korean servers, Taiwan, and especially the mainland? How to localize it in a down-to-earth way? How to adapt to relevant policies? How to deal with malicious reports? These are all things we can't do, and even money is useless. What's more, the online game audience and category share in the mainland are both the first. Since this piece of cake cannot be lost, but we want to sit back and enjoy the fruits of our labor, let Penguin work hard to water it. Then we can only give up part of the shares to give them more motivation to do this. Ryan's voice was obviously painful, but this is too cheap for them. We spent $65.68 million to purchase 77.4% of the shares and sold them only $64 million, 40% of the shares. We have gained a lot this time. Think about it. Before it was implemented, it was just a good idea. Riot doubled its valuation from $84.85 million after the acquisition. Penguin is already very generous, and it has achieved multiple goals at one stroke. Not only will the promotion of the game no longer be restricted, but we don't need to spend much money and energy. The 37.4% of the shares in hand have a high profit ratio. More importantly, I'm determined to deepen the cooperation with Penguin. They have channels and connections in the mainland. When our movie entered China, they also took over the promotion business, but it has always been a business matter. With this close contact, once this game is successful, we will get benefits and there will be a link between the two parties. In this way, there will be more additional benefits. Ryan naturally believed in Lemon's decision, but he only felt that Lemon had thought so much before laying out the game. If so, then the vision is longer term and the means are more smooth. The production business of the company is still steadily advancing. Mother and son, in which the three great Mexicans all contributed, chose to have a small-scale movie in early November for next year's Oscars. Although the screening results were mediocre, with a single theater taking less than $6,000, the film critic's reputation was quite good, and it has the potential for public relations. How is Avatar going? Lemon, who got rid of a series of trivial matters, also had the energy to focus on the production affairs of his own company. It has been more than half a month since the filming was completed. The rendering was done while shooting, and the post-production speed was also very fast. What about Nolan? It seems that they are shooting interior scenes at Warner Studios recently. The venue required is quite large, which is very troublesome to shoot. They can't shoot a scene in a day. Thomas answered. Is that so? Lemon sighed and suddenly suggested, how about the two of us go to the set of Inception? Well, I just came back from there last week. I had dinner with Ledger on the day he finished shooting his scene. Well, if you don't want to go, forget it. Seeing Thomas lying on the sofa and reading the newspaper with peace of mind, Lemon couldn't help but think of those tense and fulfilling days when he was preparing to shoot Buried. At that time, Thomas was not only fiddling with the camera, but also doing the hard labor. Now that he has the conditions, he is getting more and more lazy. In less than 7 years, the few people who came together by chance have become very different. I became a big director. I can shoot whatever I want, and my ambition is rising as I stand higher. Ryan followed me and became a first-line producer in the industry with a rich resume and literary screenwriting. Thomas's work environment is getting better and better, but he has always been happy to be a full-time cameraman and has no ambition. George became the regional president of Europe and rarely contacted him. Heath Ledger simply became a professional in Hollywood evil roles and was sought after by a group of fans, but he lacked a series of absolute protagonists. Otherwise he could compare his salary with another Hollywood alternative, Johnny Depp, and everyone lived a good life. Thomas didn't want to go, so he sat for a while, so Lemon had to visit the set alone. "Hey, Nolan." He greeted him happily. But at this time, the crew was shooting intensively every day, and Nolan didn't talk much with Lemon. He was a workaholic, and when he encountered serious matters, he would be serious. Later, Lemon, who did not stay in the center of the studio, ran to the dressing room and saw Leo, who still had good looks, thinking about his lines by himself. "Hey, Leo, are you used to working with him? Are you used to it?" Lemon teased. Nolan is famous for not knowing what the actors are doing before the film is finished, and they often come in different parts. Moreover, his script only gives lines in sections, and there are always few scene descriptions, which are all hidden in his mind. If it is a science fiction theme, it will be even more mysterious. The actors can't stand the imagination on the spot. This is not what an actor said during an interview. Just act according to the requirements honestly. These two directors are more experienced than each other. As an actor, Leo, even though he has a high status, doesn't want to say anything behind his back. "I don't know when I will have the opportunity to work with you. I quite like your plays." Leo smiled. Leo is now in the golden period of male actor. He has good looks and good acting skills, so Lemon took the initiative to reply, "There will be a chance." He really wants to work with Leo. After a few casual chats, Nolan has already started to set up the camera. Staff members come and go, and under his command, the required scenes are gradually completed. Lemon stands aside and watches silently. It feels that the atmosphere of the crew is still good. Chapter 934 Dependents, Subscriptions, Votes. As night falls in Burbank, the lights intersect to create a beautiful scene of a city that never sleeps. However, for most businessmen or company executives, night is the time to calculate the value of their performance, and it is not worth spending time on the so-called beautiful scene. In the office of Lionsgate, John Feller is one of them, but he seems to have encountered some troubles, frowning, and his expression is not so happy when looking at the report, and he sighs from time to time. If you don't know, you might think that Lionsgate has had a miserable life recently, and the projects have failed frequently, so they are worried. But the real situation is just the opposite. The cooperation with Firefly, as well as the market benefits of New Moon and I'm Legend, are all seen by people in the industry. It is not a money-losing product. Only taking the cooperation of New Moon for analysis, this film was released on November 10th. With a domestic box office of $296.6 million and an overseas box office of $413 million, a total global cumulative of $709.6 million, and the highest single theater has exceeded 35,000. With such a record, John Fillmore has been in the industry for more than 20 years and has seen such a hit movie before, but it happened to him, and the first movie only made $400 million worldwide, and the second movie increased so much, which is also rare, especially relying only on teenagers and female groups. For most studios, the ability of the Twilight series to make money is really too crazy. So if we only talk about whether it makes money or not, even if Lionsgate only takes 10% of the channel commission, it can still earn $41.3 million from the box office, which is definitely profitable. For a movie, the big part is never the box office. According to the family entertainment market and licensing income under such results, John Fillmore made a preliminary estimate, and he was very moved. If it is operated reasonably, Lionsgate can make no less than $90 million in profit from it, and the most profitable project produced by Lionsgate this year is The Black Wind Woman in Prison, which only made nearly $100 million. After more than half a year of planning, not to mention some projects that have been operated hard and still lost money. Of course, John Fellamy was not sighing for this. He just saw the rapid and healthy development of Firefly, and he was really worried about his own production business. After all, they have worked so hard to develop an overseas distribution network and invested financial resources and energy to make a big splash. As a result, they still lack film sources until now, and their dependence on Firefly is really disturbing. Under the glamour, what is hidden is that more than 2 years have passed, and Lionsgate has not found the foundation to completely stand firm in the situation of many Hollywood heroes, and has its own ace series or sustainable development plan. More importantly, the more Firefly shows its extraordinary production ability, the more he fears that the cooperation between the two parties will end one day, or Lyman will be greedy and further suppress the interests of Lionsgate, the distributor. At that time, what should Lionsgate do? These concerns are also a manifestation of Lionsgate's lack of confidence. After all, if such a thing really happens, Lionsgate has basically no resistance. They are the party that uses price war to differentiate themselves, not to mention that after the store was set up, they did not achieve the expected changes, which was beyond the expectations of Lionsgate executives. Do you want to say that they are not active? In addition to stabilizing the cooperation with Firefly and maintaining a good personal relationship with Firefly's executives, they are also vigorously developing their own production business and looking for other high-quality content providers. However, the results are not as good as Firefly's projects, or they do not take risks. The report data spread out on the table clearly proved that, from 2009 to date, of the 5 self-produced films, 2 made a small profit, 1 barely broke even due to a loss in schedule, 1 could not even recover the invested funds, let alone profit, and 1 was a small hit, but after settlement, at the end of the year, the operating income was only about $140 million. There were 8 projects in which they participated in production or distribution, with an average profit of about $30 million and a profit of more than $240 million, of which the part in cooperation with Firefly accounted for 72% of the total value. Yes, Lionsgate's dependence on Firefly is so high that John Feldmeyer is panicked. Looking at so many Hollywood studios, none of them has such a profit distribution. Even if the DreamWorks team moved into Paramount, Paramount's production business also depends on DreamWorks, but there is no such high proportion. Just talking about the performance participation, Lionsgate's distribution department is almost becoming a subordinate unit of Firefly, helping them to complete the parts that they can't complete, and the price is cheap. Of course, although he thought so, John Feldmeyer didn't show this feeling at all. At the celebration party some time ago, he even personally received Lyman. John Feldmeyer sighed, thinking about changing this situation through external forces. He also found that it was completely overtaking only by cultivating its own producers, so forget it. That night, on the other side of the sea, Rodriguez Perelman, who was in charge of the construction of overseas channel sites, was also summarizing his work in his office. My team and I have been in South America for nearly 4 months. Under the implementation of the response plan, we have eliminated the basic difficulties and put the contact and distribution on the right track. However, in order to avoid the trouble of agency, as well as to speed up the syncing of channels and determine the distribution process, the company should start early and produce suitable projects. However, in order to make the film burst out the market energy it deserves, we must consider the unfamiliarity of the audience and publicity, the imperfect degree of delivery, etc. for the overseas projects we promote. Therefore, choosing movies with a narrow profit margin is most suitable for the preliminary preparation. Overseas competitiveness must also take into account cultural differences and minimize the imposition of regional culture. Considering the cultural gap, science fiction, action, adventure, love and other dramas will be more mainstream, while comedy, horror, and family dramas are relatively difficult, and it is difficult for regional audiences to accept American slang culture. Moreover, in the film market, especially for some less developed regions, the audiences there have a great demand for special effects movies. If they don't pay attention to the content, special effects are the most satisfying visually. They are less picky than American audiences. According to research, The Legend of Loch Ness and Dragon Rider have the support of the achievement outside the wall, so they did not lose too much. The results of using sites for trial contact are very gratifying. Most local channel dealers do not care about supplying more film parties. They also need enough film sources for selection and competition. In addition, the recruitment of regional personnel has been completed. Experienced distribution personnel have been supplemented. There are more than 130 employees in total. Please accept them as soon as possible. In terms of finance, this operation has consumed more than 73 million as of this month. The site laying and staff salaries are the main expenses. The remaining $12 million are sufficient for the next step of activities. Please prepare to arrange for the PwC team to formulate regulations such as funding procedures and reimbursement procedures for these regional sites in order to standardize accounts. Rodriguez Perelman wrote this, stretched his back easily, and felt satisfied. He didn't know how many miles he had traveled, how much energy and effort he had spent on this distribution network. Thinking about the future appearance in the circle and his own upcoming promotion, he could not help but send the email neatly. Chapter 935, 2012 subscriptions, votes. Colombia's move to break out of the summer siege is quite effective. 2012 has won 2 consecutive championships. The current cumulative revenue on paper is 225 million, but in fact, if we count some countries and regions where the film has not yet been screened, it is likely to be around 280 million US. There is no problem with profitability. And our movie I'm Legend has been squeezed to the 9th place in the weekly list, but it should have broken 700 million in the past 2 days. If we increase the publicity expenses to match this news, there will probably be a small wave of popularity this weekend. What do you think, boss? In the office of Blue Butterfly Pictures, Lyman was reporting on the film market. Oh, no problem, you decide. During this period, the world was shrouded in an inexplicable doomsday rumor, and the interpretation of the Mayan prophecy was spread everywhere, but the masses just liked it. The spontaneous use and high popularity made Colombia laugh so hard that his eyebrows disappeared. After all of this is just the established publicity plan for 2012, and it is not chosen to be released in 2012. It is really eye-opening for peers in the industry that such an effect can be achieved without the addition of the right time. Sony is still good at playing. Of course, when Colombia chose to withdraw the film from the summer, many people thought it was another box office disaster that failed due to internal previews, reduced resources and lack of confidence in direct competition. Who would have thought that Colombia was holding back and hyping up the doomsday topic at the end of the year? Even after it was released, even if it received numerous approvals, the media reputation and audience feedback were not good, but it was also due to the excellent operation of topic traffic that the box office exploded. Especially in the mainland, after China Film introduced the film. Let's talk about why it was introduced. In fact, China Film did not only see that a special effects masterpiece with a budget of 200 million US would definitely sell well, otherwise New Moon, Sherlock Holmes, Fake It and other proven films would not have been introduced. The key is that Colombia is very pleasing to the mainland market this time. Anyone who has seen this film knows that the reason why China Film chose this film from a large number of major films when the import amount was about to reach the target was that it was politically correct. It announced to the world that China was rising in the new international order. The Olympic Games highly concentrated human and material resources to create miracles, and the unique political cohesion left over from thousands of years of water control was transformed into the Zuoming Valley Plan to save the earth and all human beings. Not only that, it also directly let the global audience know that Zizang is an inseparable part of China's territory. Compared with some American media that have crooked buttocks and are extremely smearing, Colombia's surrender is simply a lotus blooming in the mud. It is conceivable why they helped to distribute it. Therefore, even if the popularity of 2012 is based on squeezing the screening share of a number of old films, Lemon has never maliciously touched porcelain or force marketing. In his heart, Colombia has never been the #1 enemy of Firefly, but only an opponent, and it is still an opponent that may work together. There is no way Spider-Man and his friends are unwilling to give it, so Lemon can only make more noise to continue to attract them. In the media reception room of the Firefly building, Will Smith, who had just arrived from home, sat on the stage with a smile on his face. It was because of the signboard behind him that the number of I'm Legend breaking 700 million worldwide was really a good promotion point. As the absolute protagonist of the film, his presence revealed a winning temperament, which felt great. Especially with the crowd of reporters who had already greeted him, Smith was eager to perform. To put it bluntly, what Lyman and others needed was to create momentum to boost their performance, but it was also a good show event. Hello, Smith. I'm a reporter from the Burbank Evening News. You've been ranked first in the Actors Net Worth list for 2 consecutive years, and 10 movies in which you played the leading role have been profitable. How do you feel now? How do you feel? Of course I'm very surprised. To be honest, I just try my best to perform well in every play and do what an actor should do. I never thought it would be like this. Then, a senior executive of Lionsgate praised you as the most worthy actor to cooperate with and the greatest actor among contemporary Hollywood stars. Do you feel that you have reached the top? Here it comes. Here comes the trap. The second question after the celebration press conference had to make Smith concentrate and choose his words. Reporters always want to ask some topical questions, even if they are asked in advance. It's just not excessive. I never thought about this. In Hollywood, anything can happen. I'm just a little lucky to have met so many excellent production teams. But the data shows that you are indeed the movie star with the highest return rate. Among the 10 movies you participated in, the highest profit rate is 420%. The reporter who set the trap was unwilling to give up and continued to lure a big star to arouse his arrogance. The microphone he held was written with the words Daily News. This doesn't mean anything. Of course, it's okay to hold up a valuable sign in front of so many reporters, but if it is compared with many peers, it is still a bit of a stepping on the meaning, so forget it. The day after the press conference, the newspapers that spent money to buy the pages were all exaggerating how popular Smith was and how popular I'm Legend was in the overseas market. What, Italy won 3 consecutive championships in the same period? Brazil broke a certain record. In short, it is to try to stir up topics and increase exposure. And such reports are of course the most satisfying to Smith's fans. You don't know until you report it, and you'll be shocked when you report it. It seems that your idol has unknowingly risen to an astonishing level in the circle. According to the actor list summarized by Variety at the end of the year, it can be easily estimated that Smith can make more than $43 million from the box office of I'm Legend, which has not yet been released, but has already been a big hit, without taking into account the additional benefits such as his worth and brand endorsements. In fact, he deserves this return. If anyone can go to Blue Butterfly Pictures and see the audience distribution of I'm Legend, they should know how much black fans have contributed to the box office. This is a height that has been difficult for Firefly's films to reach in the past. It is unreasonable to say that it is not because of Smith's appeal. Therefore, this victory means a lot to the stacker holders of several parties, and it also adds another beautiful data to Lionsgate's year-end performance. The title of Mr. 700 million that was attached to Smith alone has also become a hot topic among fans. Although this seems to have been somewhat neglected, the behind-the-scenes workers do suffer a bit in terms of publicity. Even though everyone knows that the director has made great contributions, the mainstream discussion is definitely still about the stars on the screen. In other words, the entire crew is an indispensable part, but the flow of traffic still has to be the natural attribute of the actors. To be honest, only American capital can use panic propaganda, which is quite tricky. Chapter 936 Raise the flag. Please subscribe and vote. The plan to boost the market went well, but Lemon's mind was no longer on it. I'm Legend had sold well enough, and the bonus from the final episode had basically met expectations. No matter what happened next, there would be no regrets. In the office of the Firefly building, when Lemon received a call from John Landor, saying that Avatar was about to be completed, and asked Mays to put it in his schedule, he went downstairs and drove straight to the airport. This time, he went to pick up the airport as a boss. Rodrigo Perelman, who had helped him run around for months and built an overseas distribution network, was back, so he naturally had to show his appreciation and win him over. The car drove to the airport. Not long after the car arrived at the airport, Perelman, who looked tired, came out of the passage pushing a suitcase. Since he had reported his work by email one step ahead of time that day, he spent a few days sorting out trivial matters before returning home. For someone like him who was used to traveling, and often sent on business trips abroad, it was a bit tiring. However, when he saw the big boss Lyman personally picking him up at the airport, he still cheered up and talked about what he cared about most. How long would it take for the company to develop overseas markets for self-distribution? In other words, whether the company's plans to expand global channels have been realized. Hearing his concern for his work, because this time, when he came back, Rodriguez Perelman would serve as the regional president, responsible for the copyright market and offline operations in overseas regions, and Blue Butterfly Pictures could also gradually take over overseas sites and sort out the distribution system. Lyman did not hide it from him and said, "I have some ideas about movies that are suitable for early distribution and familiar with the business, but before that, there are 3 points to be resolved. First, carefully sort out the overseas distribution team to improve the efficiency of our own operations. Second, we can gradually reveal that we will soon have independent distribution capabilities, but we must deal with the pressure from other studios and even be prepared for the possibility that friendly companies will become enemies and respond at any time. Third, as the year draws to a close, try to get close to the senior management of major studios such as Columbia, Warner, and Universal, and clearly tell them that the projects they have cooperated with will not change, and because of the initial construction and the lack of publicity and promotion, some projects cannot do without them. So let these studios acquiesce that Firefly has its own overseas distribution system, and continue to make friends with interests." Perelman heard that the boss was not arrogant. After all, the idea that there would be no worries about global distribution with a foundation was wrong in itself, and the smile on his face deepened. For channel merchants in the film industry, it is not enough to have connections. Strong distribution capabilities are also important. Otherwise, he would not have deliberately summarized in the email in advance what themes are suitable for independent distribution. Isn't it because some projects are forced to start, which will only disappoint people? From this point of view, the relationship with the big companies cannot be easily severed, not only because Firefly still has something to ask for in terms of demand, but also because the Big Five's distribution network, which is all over the country, is only more mature than Firefly's infancy, and they have a lot of publicity resources and a large enough influence. It is also because they are an alliance themselves and have the right to make rules that attract people's attention, such as the MPAA, Movie Association of America. The MPAA was established in 1922, and its main responsibility is to define the film classification. In other words, the specifications of a movie should be screened are decided by this censorship agency, and the censorship committee members are jointly served by the chairman and president of the Big Five. The Big Scissors are controlled by capital. However, the MPAA will not mess around, and I haven't heard of anything that deliberately disgusts independent manufacturers. It's just that the Big Five often open a backdoor for themselves, but don't give other manufacturers the opportunity to infiltrate. For example, some of their own bloody and violent scenes are rated PG-13, while outsiders also have such scenes, but they can only be R-rated. Moreover, the independence of Firefly is inevitable. After more and more capital is invested in the entertainment industry, the studios are less and less restricted by funds. Lionsgate is one of the pioneers. Lyman does not think that the Big Five can continue to accept this result. The ability to distribute channels that others do not have is certainly a consolidation of the Big Five's discourse power and a major source of income, but this benefit cannot enable the Big Five to achieve absolute monopoly after standing at the upstream of the industrial chain, because regional channel dealers are also not satisfied with being controlled. Just think about it this way, why should an institution representing a country's ideological discourse power let Hollywood make the decision? Even if it uses trade customization to forcibly bind the import and export rights of movies, institutions such as China Film are still very strong. No studio has ever been able to distribute movies in the mainland at will. Even Japan dares to adjust the schedule at will. There are countless so-called regional protection policies. What can we do? we still have to cooperate. Therefore, no matter what the consideration is, as long as Firefly can still take care of the interests of some people and make them feel that it is within an acceptable range, the relationship can still be maintained. For Lyman, if the conflict was just caused by interests, it would be the best to solve it in a short time. He was not unwilling to share the cake, but just changed the way of sharing and made some coordination. Just like Paramount and Warner once resisted, they originally wanted to suppress and warn Firefly because of the small matter of sharing the revenue, but when the profit project of tens of millions was put in their hands, they could still put aside their past grudges, change their attitude, and immediately greet Lyman with a smile. After sending Perelman home, Lyman asked him to have a good rest, and then turned back to the company. This heart-to-heart talk between the boss and the capable subordinate was originally like this. In Lyman's view, the identities of the two were not equal, and the arrangement for him in the future was indeed a promotion. From being only responsible for the copyright management of North America, his authority was greatly expanded, and he also began to enjoy the company's dividends. The basic annual salary at least doubled to $15 million. Lyman asked himself, this condition is already good. In the following days, under the leadership of Lyman, Blue Butterfly Pictures gradually expanded its distribution staff and promised to some executives of in-state sites that those who volunteered to take charge of overseas sites would receive a 30% salary increase, so they were able to quickly change their appearance and put up the Blue Butterfly brand. On the other hand, for the audience, no one cares about the planning of a studio, but for the industry, it is undoubtedly another earthquake. What surprised them most was that after Lionsgate's independent label, the second one to blow the horn was Firefly, led by Lyman. Its growth is really sigh-worthy. Amid the clamor, the benefits of cooperating with the Big Five were reflected. First of all, overseas capital manufacturers such as Sony and Universal did not care much. After Warner, Fox and other senior executives repeatedly confirmed that Marvel's label would not be independent, they all chose to default. After the change of the helmsman of Paramount, he focused on the development of his own business and ignored the previous mess. Therefore, except for Disney's desire to jump, but did not get much response, it was left unresolved. Just as Lyman had planned long ago, the combination of interests brought about an inseparable relationship. No one wanted to take the lead in this matter and ruin the tacit situation. The distribution rights of Iron Man were in the hands of Warner. Thor was in the hands of Sony, Captain America was in the hands of Fox, and the Hulk of Universal was helped by Firefly to regain its value, so there was no need for internal fighting. When seeing this scene, the senior executives of Lionsgate all had complicated expressions. They understood that the two directions had overlapped. From now on, it would be difficult for Firefly to become an ally of Lionsgate. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 937, Chapter 942, 2 movies. Please subscribe and vote. Regardless of how complicated Lionsgate's thoughts are, the established trajectory is still moving forward. At night, in the study of The Last Manor, Lyman was sitting at his desk thinking about the direction of the script. Just as he answered Perelman, since the company has been planning for so long, and has initially established a foothold in the overseas market, it is not too late to implement the distribution system and use suitable movies to connect the upstream and downstream to precipitate the reserves. And when the movie is released, it will be favored by overseas channel dealers, and they will find that there are many benefits to cooperating with Firefly, which will also find a convenient way to expand the publicity and distribution capabilities in the future. However, although the plan is like this, it is really troublesome to put it into practice, just like the creative direction he has to think about now has many restrictions. Because this is a new pioneering action, unlike Blue Butterfly, which has been operating in North America for several years, and has deeper connections with advertisers, radio stations, media, and theater chains, it is still in the dark overseas, which is a disadvantage in publicity. In addition, due to regional cultural barriers, some themes are naturally flawed, and have to be abandoned. Although Hollywood has always been a treasure land leading the film trend, not everything can work. In this way, counting the cards in hand, there are actually not many that can be played. First, high investment special effects blockbusters are not good. Even if they have the least cultural barriers, audiences all over the world can be visually satisfied. Distributors also like this kind of money invested the most, thinking that the studio is very confident, but it still doesn't work. The ability to release is not enough for the time being. Secondly, comedy is not good. No matter which country's comedy, most of the local box office is larger than the overseas box office. This is the most typical theme that is not popular in export. So, Lyman thought about the similarities between the domestic and overseas markets as much as possible, and had to consider the budget issue, and gradually locked into scripts. The first is the highly rated work Gone Girl about marriage between men and women. The second is the highly rated work The Tuna focusing on suspense and crime. The advantages of these two films are that they have strong storylines, can be operated in the long run, and the core of the stories can be understood by the audience. In addition, the shooting cost is low, and a high interest rate ratio can be achieved without too many resources, which is just suitable for the overseas channels that Blue Butterfly Pictures has just established. As we said before, there are two screening modes in the cinema market at this time. One is the high investment, high share, and high intensity short-term operation that is eager to consume all the potential of the film in just 1 or 2 weeks. The advantage is that the box office momentum is accumulated quickly, and it can be seen at a glance whether the film can make money or lose money, and then it can be quickly adjusted according to market feedback. Cinemas also like to give the most screens to support such movies, because such movies will decline quickly after the peak period, which is also very convenient for the cinema's operating system. The second is a long-term operation with average intensity and average cinema resources required. The advantage is that the initial investment cost is low, the risk is relatively small, and it is easy to follow the audience's word of mouth. The disadvantage is that it has higher requirements for the story and film quality. Moreover, due to the long cycle, theaters are willing to give screens to maintain a certain screening scale based on their own needs. At this point, we cannot fail to mention that the participation of theaters in the revenue sharing is determined by the cycle plus quota model. That is, in the first few weeks, the ratio between the producer and the theater was basically 9:1, 8:2, and 7:3, and the producer generally had the majority, and then slowly transitioned to 2:8 and 1:9. With the theater having the majority, and in the middle, the algorithm of taking the higher of the quota ticket data was also used. In Hollywood, when the studios become strong, the theaters are always the ones who are cut, such as Disney's amazing revenue sharing ratio. 70% in North America alone. Well, that's Avengers 4. In other words, if a long cycle can maintain a certain box office trend, the theaters will also like it very much, provided that it has been released for so long and there are still a certain number of audiences to support it. To put it simply, the short cycle is a rich man way of playing, which requires a high level of strength, and the long cycle is the poor man way of playing. Every year's box office dark horses are basically based on long cycles and word of mouth, and they are often some independent studios. This is the reason it is hard to say which of these two methods has more room for profit. There are just some minor efficiency issues, but this is not a big deal. So the main decision depends on how the studio thinks about the film's prospects, and then arrange it. Lyman wants to make up for the shortcomings of insufficient overseas promotion resources by relying on the advantages of a long cycle, slowly expand his share, and naturally get involved. After deciding on 2 future development projects, Lyman began to think about the filming team. He decided to shoot The Tuna because he had not really shot a movie with such a strong suspenseful atmosphere in all these years. It was very fresh, which was very important to him. Trying different themes has always been challenging for him. As for Gone Girl, the first choice of director is naturally David Fincher. This is his masterpiece. The film is full of David Fincher's usual gloomy, melancholy, and sad tone, and this low atmosphere is created through the arrangement of lighting and the use of photography techniques. If it is replaced by someone with a weaker personal style, this story may become a bloody marriage drama instead of a heavy taste, creepy, and classic that is hailed as a must-see for couples. After watching this movie, if you are willing to walk into the marriage hall hand in hand, it means that you are ready to accompany each other by your pillow. Even this guy's directorial philosophy is very eccentric. I don't think that movies only play the role of pleasing the audience and entertaining the public. My interest lies in scar films. However, what is a little troublesome is that Lyman has little contact with David Fincher. As one of the most prestigious scar directors in Hollywood, although he is not short of money and a variety of scripts handed to him, he certainly has the ability to appreciate good stories. In other words, as long as he takes a fancy to Gone Girl, the two sides will have a bridge of acquaintance. Time was tight, and the next day, the script outline of Gone Girl was handed over to the screenwriter department for filling and polishing. Lyman called Johnson and asked him to find an agent who could talk to David Fincher through CAA's network to find out David's schedule. After giving this instruction, he asked Johnson to keep paying attention and remember to contact him if there was any progress. Then he took the outline of the tuner and threw it to Ryan, asking him to watch more suspense works and make sure they were interesting. But soon, after Avatar was completed, the schedule and theater arrangements quickly squeezed in. Chapter 938, Internal Preview of Avatar. Please subscribe and vote. Avatar is the only movie so far that was shot entirely with 3D technology, and theater operators are taking it very seriously. After all, the transformation of the IMAX giant screen has been going on for so long, and the effect is not so amazing that the audience is particularly satisfied with it, and they are not willing to spend more money to enjoy the new audiovisual environment. The reason is that the post-production conversion is quite flat, and the sense of immersion and three-dimensionality has not been improved much. Only a small number of audiences have tried it out for a new experience, and it is not a mainstream choice, which makes theater operators a little unsure. Under such a premise, they will be more eager to hope that Avatar can play a good demonstration role. Whether it can make a profit will be put aside first, and whether the audiovisual experience is really that great is what the capitalists care about most. Otherwise, if they continue to replace the equipment, wouldn't it be of little use? That would be bad, and the unknown always makes people worry. In the morning, inside Blue Butterfly Pictures, as soon as the news about the overseas sites came out, and they were willing to raise their salaries by 30% for overseas distribution business, many staff members of the headquarters applied for the intention to go there. In 2009, after the stock market crash, the recovery speed of the US economy was not fast. In view of the salary, many people gave up the temptation of being close to home for the future of work and family. There is no need to mention the arrangements one by one. It's just that, when some employees were busy going overseas to cultivate the channel system belonging to Blue Butterfly Pictures, Lyman also sat with Lyman in the office. After a while, just before and after, Lyman's assistant ran in and reported, "Boss, the Columbia people and Cameron are here." That's right. Cameron was already in a hurry to arrange the screening as soon as the post-production of the film was completed. The main reason was that he was under great pressure. Although he was busy shooting on the crew, he seemed to have no time to care about the industry's cold attitude towards Avatar, but in fact he was a very proud person. Is his mind very mature? He would also vent his grievances and slap those who laughed at him on the Oscars podium. This time, the same reason, holding back a breath. To prove himself, the truck driver cannot wait to appear on the screen, even though it is already mid-November, Christmas halfway through the season. Just 1 or 2 minutes of Lyman secretly thinking. A small encore decision-making team has been gathered. After some polite exchanges, Lyman looked at Columbia's senior executive Gareth Antoinette. "What does your company mean to arrange for it to be released at the end of the year? Columbia must have done its homework in advance." Gareth replied directly, "Each has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that there are no threatening competitors in the year-end period. The popular movies in the Christmas season, including 2012, do not have the energy to continue. As for the disadvantages, the base of the audience and the desire to watch movies will be much worse than in the summer. However, Gareth changed the subject. If Avatar has the potential to attract audiences to the theaters, we prefer to release it at the end of the year, so as to avoid competition with other blockbusters. In that case, let's arrange it this way. With so few days left, the release level will definitely be first class. In addition, in order to deepen market confidence and enhance the development of the project, I hope you can arrange an invitation for an internal preview in the theater as soon as possible. Gareth nodded with a smile. Internal preview? Haha, Mr. Last is quite bold. It's scheduled for the end of the year, right? Well, I have great confidence in director Cameron. His movies always surprise people. Cameron glanced at Lyman and felt a little happy. It's always nice to be praised. However, in terms of publicity, I suggest that the trailer doesn't need to be edited. Lyman suddenly remembered something and continued. Gareth was a little puzzled. Why? Propaganda based on manuscripts alone is not as intuitive as videos. Lyman shook his head repeatedly as if to refute. For a cross-era 3D movie, ordinary projection equipment cannot bear the expected audio-visual effects. If the audience regards Avatar as a mainstream commercial work on the market, once such a stereotype is established, it will be more difficult to eliminate it. We even have to emphasize the difference between IMAX theaters and ordinary theaters. This is not what Lyman said nonsense. If we don't make good use of the advantages of Avatar, do we really regard it as a commercial movie with a weak story and some cliches? American audiences have already passed the stage of being obsessed with special effects. One after another high-budget blockbusters have already whetted their appetites. If they want to recoup the $500 million cost, they must play some tricks. Before the release of Avatar, there were so many articles popularizing the differences in screening specifications that we can see how effective Fox's trick was. Later, the always popular attendance of IMAX theaters also proved this point. Yes, that's the truth. Gareth's eyes lit up. After all, the ticket price of IMAX theaters is still a little expensive, and the profit from screening is undoubtedly greater. When Lyman was ready for the preview, Columbia brought a group of theater chain representatives or professional buyers to the screening room of the Firefly building, where Cameron had been waiting for a long time. Not only them, but also several major overseas ticket storage regions, such as Italy, the United Kingdom, and China Film, also rushed to the preview site one after another under the notice of Columbia, waiting to see whether Avatar, which is said to have the largest investment in the first 3D film, has the potential to be a hit. If so, how should it be arranged to create the most profit? After all, from the heart, the theater chain must want to get a high-quality film source. If Avatar can be a hit, their performance will be much better. But for Lyman, the arrival of so many capital representatives also means that the construction of overseas channels can be tried first. So Lyman's performance today is very active. He deliberately chats with overseas distributors and exchanges business cards. After a long time, after seeing that everyone who should come has come, Lyman did not delay for a long time, but directly said, Avatar is expected to be scheduled on December 16th, and Columbia and Blue Butterfly will be responsible for all publicity and distribution work. Now, you can watch the feature film first, and decide the scale of the screening. As Lyman's voice fell, the theater chain representatives all sat up straight, with a slightly serious attitude. If this is confidence, the internal preview is actually the theater chain's evaluation of the movie that will be scheduled for release, based on the needs of their own camp. Seeing the crowd's attitude, Lyman smiled and waved his hand, asking the staff waiting for the screening order to take out the copy, turn off the lights, and prepare to witness this work that has been repeatedly approved and cost a lot of money. Whether it is a hit, a bad movie, or just average, it all depends on the evaluation of the crowd. Chapter 939 wins priority in screening specifications. Please subscribe and vote. Internal previews are a big deal in Columbia's eyes, as they can obtain necessary market forecasts. They are also a necessary procedure in the eyes of theaters. Otherwise, who knows whether your movie will work? You can't just say it and expect everyone to bet on a lot of theater resources. That's unrealistic. In the eyes of Firefly, this event is also a favorable opportunity for upstream and downstream stacker holders to follow them to promote Avatar with peace of mind and to make friends with overseas regional distributors in advance. On this day, in the spacious screening room, a group of people were sitting in their seats, watching a wonderful journey of visual wonders. Pandora, the Mother Tree, and the Navi tribe depict an alien humanities and environment, coupled with a deep three-dimensional sense and immersive experience. Although it was the first time to come into contact with a 3D movie, when a fierce rhino rushed towards the protagonist, everyone was startled, as if they were about to be hit, and it was inevitable that some jokes were made, but this strange feeling was very good. It has to be said that this is a charm that is difficult to describe in words. The audience became the protagonists, no longer looking down on everything from a god's perspective, but followed the characters on the screen to set foot on the land of the Navi. This is why, even though the story of Avatar is simple and the narrative is straightforward, the emotions of these first-line filmmakers who have watched too many movies can never be calmed down when watching the movie. At the end, a very Hollywood-style hero saves the world, leaving an open ending, and the business of discussing the schedule finally gets down to business. Under the attention of everyone, James Cameron stood on the side of Lyman, squinting his eyes, enjoying it all. Although I had expected it in my heart, I still enjoyed it when it really happened. People were not stingy in expressing their other complicated feelings with applause. The whispers among the theater chain dealers, mixed together, could also reflect everyone's mood. He succeeded. He raised the visual spectacle to several levels. I wonder if it would be fun if Avatar was released first and 2012 was released later. It seems that our IMAX theater renovation work is not in vain. The atmosphere of discussion spread quickly, and then quickly paused. Soon, the theater chain's attention was focused on Lyman and Columbia's distribution president Gareth. They understood that the next step was to allocate resources, lead the release, and discuss how to get money out of the fans' pockets more efficiently. After the discussion came to an end, Gareth was not very excited about the theater chain dealer's positive measures. For cinema operators, after watching such a movie, they all realized that Avatar has the potential to become a hit in the market. Apart from other things, with this immersive experience that is different from other mainstream special effects blockbusters, IMAX theaters will not be a burden that not many viewers choose. Some cinema operators are even considering increasing their investment in IMAX projection equipment while there is still some time. In particular, the cinemas with prime land under their control must be equipped with IMAX theaters. In fact, cinema operators have long realized that with the enrichment of entertainment methods, the impact on the film market is more or less a little worried. Otherwise, they would not have laid out the 3D projection market in advance when 3D technology was not mature enough. Isn't it to continue to cultivate the audience and make them feel that watching movies is still a good enjoyment? From this premise, how to attract more audiences to the cinema is an idea that the producers and cinema operators can agree on. However, for Columbia, it still wants to see its own film industry occupy a larger share, rather than watching other manufacturers show off. Although he is not completely sure what heights Avatar will reach, through today's performance and the recognition of many theater representatives, he believes that this movie can be successful. However, the more complicated the feelings are. After all, the majority of the profits of Avatar are definitely not Columbia, and the generosity of the theater dealers makes him feel a little uncomfortable. Even this kind of performance makes the subordinates around him look at him with a hint of suspicion. We are going to make money, but the boss has thought of something bad. But after this incident, if the project really pays back and makes a profit, Gareth also understands that the people who may be more uncomfortable than him may be the senior executives of Disney and Universal who have not boarded the ship. At least Columbia is just watching Firefly once again about to achieve great success, and the brand image has once again achieved the best publicity. Then Disney and Universal may have no patience to take the initiative to withdraw at the moment of blossoming and bearing fruit, and the sense of disappointment is even greater. It is not known how much they will regret it at that time. Watching Lyman chatting with a group of channel dealers outside, Gareth sighed silently. This feeling of wanting a good project, but not wanting Firefly to get too many benefits is really hard to describe. This Lyman not only does his job as a director very well, but also has such vision and courage. Maybe he should make a career Thinking of this, Gareth did not have the complicated feeling caused by the unstable state of mind. He turned around with a smile and joined the social game. Congratulations, Lemon, Cameron, it will indeed lead the trend. Gareth came over, and Lemon smiled and replied, congratulations, the next distribution work still needs your support. Gareth took a good look at Lemon and said without comment, don't worry, we have already started the corresponding arrangements. In this era, no one can get away with money, even if it is a disguised funding of competitors. Of course, Lemon didn't know that the man in front of him had so many thoughts, and he was in a good mood today. He knew that Avatar had already won a super large-scale public release, and by that time, the whole world would refresh its perception of Cameron and the producer Firefly, and even the global audience would continue to deepen their confidence in the Firefly brand, not to mention the project's strong ability to attract money, Cameron's personal favor, and the cooperation foundation that has been established between the two parties. In other words, Lemon's efforts to get on board and invest so much in Avatar have finally landed on the right track. At this moment, seeing that the general trend has been determined, even Lemon is a little complacent, but he did not show this mentality explicitly, and he was still very polite to chat with Gareth about the next publicity expenses and advertising arrangements. When the conversation ended, Gareth once again took a deep look at the always decent Frenchman and just took the initiative to say goodbye and turned away. The back is a little desolate. Chapter 940, Chapter 945. Who knows? Please subscribe, vote. When Lemon left the screening room and returned to his office, Assistant Mace quickly brought 2 bottles of water and handed them to Lemon and Lam, who had greeted him and followed him. Lemon nodded, drank some water to moisten his throat, and quickly asked, what is the situation with the cinema chain? How are they going to arrange it? The best cinemas in the city center, the most stalls, and up to 4,550 cinemas. Liam was still very excited. Remember to contact Columbia about publicity. In addition, have the people from China Film Group been retained? Yes, they will take a flight the day after tomorrow, and will go to Columbia to sign a screening contract tomorrow. Liam replied. That's good. We will go to them later to build some rapport. Although the mainland's film market is less than 1/10 of North America's, and its output value is less than 1/50th, the mainland's copyright market does need time to improve. They still have a lot of room for growth. With such a large population, their film market should not be underestimated. As I have always emphasized, the company should make the interest groups there better accept our business. The national conditions there are different, and they value certain things more than interests. If we don't pay attention to this, no matter what we do, our foundation will be unstable, and we will get half the result with twice the effort. You should understand what I mean. I don't want any employees in the company to say something inappropriate, especially the site managers there, who should pay more attention to the screening, and not let in a fool, who randomly stands on the side of international politics. The public opinion there is also sensitive to this matter, and they have a strong sense of maintaining the national political system. For example, Columbia's emphasis on showing goodwill is also something we are actively learning. All our preparations and layouts must always keep those red lines in mind, and you should also make it clear to the team responsible for mainland promotion. Lyman listened and nodded repeatedly. Don't worry, I will strictly control those who disregard the interests of the company, take sides and publish private goods to please certain people. I will not allow such people to appear in our distribution team. Just do your best. Let's go. Lyman was stunned. Where are we going? To talk to the people from China Film. Isn't it too hasty? I plan to treat them to a banquet in the evening. The banquet will be arranged as usual. The film has just been screened not long ago. Doesn't it show that we value them and are more sincere? Yes, yes. The boss said so. Naturally, the potential market with a share of less than 13% needs to be managed well. The preview of Avatar was very good, which is also very useful for China Film. The schedule arrangement near the end of the year means that their indicators are full again. What to do with the imported films in 10 years is something that needs to be carefully considered. Avatar will undoubtedly make a good start. Don't say that it is squeezing the mainland market after it is introduced, although from the results, it is true, but we should think that it is precisely because of the pressure from Hollywood blockbusters at any time that mainland film talents will be proactive and eager to make progress. Moreover, this is a sacrifice of trade binding, and it is not easy to refuse. Of course, several film purchasing managers of China Film Group originally planned to negotiate with Columbia earlier and then go back to arrange the film in advance, but when they were about to leave, they were stopped by the people of Firefly, who insisted that their boss wanted to meet, but this matter revealed something unusual. After all, in the eyes of China Film Group, Firefly and Columbia are partners who have cooperated in the business field. It's not that close, but these two studios are relatively obedient and have not made some redline mistakes, so relatively speaking, they have a little more dealings. After being a little surprised, the film purchasing manager of China Film Group immediately asked the organization for instructions, and the answer he got was to keep a calm attitude and test the bottom first. So, the people from China Film waited for a while in the room, arranged by Firefly to see what Firefly wanted to do. Try to talk less and listen more. The leader of China Film reminded, the United States is determined to destroy us. These capitalists are particularly good at adapting in some aspects, and are easy to confuse people. We understand. Everyone was guessing randomly, and Lemon and Lyman walked in with a smile. Sorry, I neglected you. No. The leader of China Film seemed to smile. You two came here. Maybe it's about Avatar. Don't worry, we have already arranged to release it on January 6th, and there will be no delay. Our cooperation has always been pleasant, Lemon said, and he didn't plan to talk more about Avatar. Of course, China Film is indeed straightforward. The spring festival period is the hottest period for watching movies in the mainland. However, Lemon was not here for this matter. Columbia would take care of overseas affairs anyway, so he didn't need to worry too much. So he stopped talking about this topic and hinted, do you know that our company is planning to get involved in overseas distribution? When the time comes, we will need your support. Several subordinates sitting next to the team leader suddenly realized what they were thinking about. It turned out that they were asking for something. It's okay. If you encounter any trouble, you can call me. The team leader was also an expert in writing blank checks, and he replied enthusiastically. Don't worry, this matter won't be difficult for you. I vaguely know that you support Sino-US co-production. When the word Sino-US co-production came out, the team leader's smile was a little stiff. In recent years, the United States is flowing industrial chain, and industrialized production methods have always been what the mainland wants to learn from, because no one wants to give up their own country's film market. In the era of blockbusters, the mainland is not short of good special effects talents. In fact, part of the special effects work of Avatar was outsourced to Huayan in the mainland. However, there are very few behind-the-scenes talent reserves and filmmakers familiar with special effects. The foundation is not solid, let alone building a high-rise building. Apart from other things, the model of Hollywood filming is that all guilds participate, and there is no need to maintain so many personnel expenses in normal times. A blockbuster is at least the effort of hundreds of people, but the studio only needs to stabilize the top dozen people to pull out a professional team, and many things can be outsourced. Among them, brokerage companies and guilds such as CAA helped a lot, but in the mainland, even the actors are under the film companies, and this is not clearly divided. In contrast, you can see that the operating costs are too wide, the burden is heavy, and it is not flexible enough. However, although Sino-US co-production is a good thing to promote, talents can be cultivated through the mature system of the United States. But the problem is that the co-production projects in recent years are very pitfalls. Not only do they not make money, but they also don't learn much. Instead, they are used by capitalists to take advantage of the support policies and get convenience. The leader thought that Lemon wanted to enjoy the screening tilt by this method, so he was a little repulsive. But who knows? Chapter 941, Monsters plus Pacific Rim's Fusion Universe, Subscriptions, Votes. China Film Group has great influence and promotional power in the whole Asia. With a population base of more than 2 billion, it represents a huge film market. Hollywood is now paying more and more attention to internationalization. Of course, it will not let go of the fat piece of meat in Asia. Even smart companies like Columbia have tried Sino-US co-production a few years ago, but it was not very successful and the interest has cooled down. However, similar actions have never stopped, and they have also actively participated in pushing some excellent Chinese language films into the United States, which has also won the favor of many Chinese language filmmakers. Lyman now wants to learn from Columbia, because Firefly already has basic overseas distribution capabilities and cannot miss the Asian market. However, his ideas are deeper, fresher, and easier to maintain a good situation than Columbia. Why is Columbia not good at Sino-US co-production? Because they don't have good projects and can't find common points in Asian culture. In other words, their Sino-US co-production is essentially to add some Chinese element, rather than catering to Chinese-speaking regions. Lyman's ideas are more substantial and realistic. He wants to absorb China's regional resources and achieve market integration through co-production, cross-border investment, and joint distribution. After all, it is very difficult for foreign films to enter the Chinese market. In addition to the limited number of censorship and imported film quotas each year, this is also the biggest reason for the restriction. However, if they cooperate with China Film Group and become co-productions, they will not only be free from restrictions, but also enjoy the same treatment as domestic films and continue to be exported. Historically, when the proportion of the Chinese market in the international box office market has become higher and higher, in 2015 alone, the number of Sino-foreign co-productions disclosed by the General Administration reached 87, but most of them were collaborative productions, that is, the model of Snowflower and the Secret Fan in Memoirs of a Geisha, while the cooperation planned by Lyman is a joint production, a form of production in which domestic and foreign production companies jointly invest, jointly produce, share benefits and jointly bear risks. In a further summary, in addition to the principled requirements for the content of the film, not touching the political red line, the General Administration also has 3 rigid standards. Domestic production personnel must be employed, and the filming must be in China. The proportion of foreign actors must not exceed 2/3 of the total number of main actors, and the proportion of Chinese investment must not be less than 1/3. All kinds of harsh conditions also limit the idea of pure advantage, so most foreign investors will not choose this model, but choose collaborative filming, which can also enjoy some of the resources of co-production films without so much trouble. However, this trouble is just a precautionary measure taken by the Chinese side. If used well, it may not be impossible to turn it into an advantage. Look at the Great Wall, the pioneer of the real co-production between China and the United States. Although the results and content have been criticized, and it has become a black spot of the national teacher, the treatment it enjoys, and the unremitting efforts of China Film, which really treats it as a son, are enough to show that China is very serious about this cooperation, and is willing to implement it. Of course, the Great Wall is a counterexample. Lyman did not want to plan such a low-level work. He had a longer-term vision than others, and the film, that has been proven by the market, is what he wants to bring out. Let's talk about Asia first. What themes and element have a wide audience? Monsters and Gundam have a very solid foundation. The spread of special effects films and animation has made China, Japan, and South Korea, the 3 Asian countries with strong votes, have a lot of contact with these themes and element. Then, if we want to deepen the cooperation, why can't we combine the monster universe with Pacific Rim to create a film series suitable for the Asian region and not so rejected by the audiences in Europe and the United States? The monster universe was created by Warner after the DC universe was blocked. Skull Island, Godzilla, etc. have achieved good results. Pacific Rim is a typical example of taking advantage of the Asian audience. Otherwise, it would not be able to make a profit if it only relied on Europe and the United States. And it just so happens that the worldview of Pacific Rim and the monster universe can be integrated together, which is something Lyman has thought about a long time ago. As for why this series is the most suitable, it is also because the series does meet the needs of the audiences in the Asian region, and the addition of Asian cultural element is not abrupt. After all, many Sino-US co-productions face a problem, that is, my project does not focus on Asia, and the introduction of investment from Asian channel dealers such as China Film is tantamount to lowering the proportion of their own interests, not to mention that the appearance of some Asian actors will lead to resistance from some old white men. The loss of the local market overshadows the dividends of the introduction of investment. This is the biggest reason why Sino-US co-productions are not popular. But Lemon's idea does not have this problem. The monster universe built on Pacific Rim is focused on Asia. In order to obtain the filming rights of the monster images, some Japanese investment had to be introduced, and it became a joint production of China, Japan and the United States. The demand for Asian distributors is very strong. Let's put it this way, the birth of the Pacific Rim project, and the result that the insiders did not want the outsiders to be famous were all unpredictable. The promotion of Pacific Rim by China Film Group was also pitifully weak compared to The Great Wall. After all, one is a very ordinary imported film and the other is a co-production. And no matter how you look at it, Pacific Rim should be more popular in the mainland market than The Great Wall. In terms of content, subject matter, and quality, it is nothing more than that China Film Group did not provide as many resources. For example, The Great Wall had a screening schedule of more than 90% on the first day. If you changed to Pacific Rim, the box office would have exploded long ago. Why did it have to be screened again later? Because the performance was too good. After the peak of the screening period, pirated copies of the internet were everywhere. These concepts are undoubtedly not considered by American studios in the current era, and this is also Lemon's advantage. He knows clearly, and is ready to implement it. He will increase the role of the Chinese side to meet the conditions of Sino-US co-production and enjoy the 43% treatment of domestic blockbusters instead of 13%. So when Lemon really talked about the Sino-US co-production model of co-production with sincerity and produced a specific and feasible co-production document, the leader of China Film Group was already excited. Do you think China does not want to develop special effects blockbusters? It is not because of the lack of talent reserves and various foundations. On the contrary, the financial pressure for many American studios is not that big a problem for China Film Group. If what Firefly said is consistent with what it did, China Film will definitely welcome co-production, because according to the rules of co-production, China Film can directly send people to learn, invest, and obtain part of the copyright of the project. Please note that it is copyright, not agency distribution rights. China Film can participate in all the benefits generated by the project during the promotion process and share the profits. This is a true co-production, which is to share the benefits, risks and all unknown market feedback. Only in this way will China Film treat it as its own son, and everyone is not stupid. It's just that the leader of China Film's film purchasing team will definitely not be able to make the decision on such a big thing. After considering it, they decided to sign the introduction contract of Avatar and would immediately go back to report to the senior management and give a reply. Chapter 942 David Fincher. Subscribe, vote. There is no accurate information over there yet. Didn't they go back? Nothing will go wrong, right? They are unwilling to work on such a sincere project? Still discussing? Okay, I get it. After Lemon hung up the phone, he had a new understanding of the so-called organization. Although it is strong, it also has the style of a state-owned enterprise. 3 days have passed since the initial contact that day, and there has not even been a formal response. Such progress would be too slow for someone like Lemon, who is used to making quick decisions and executing quickly without hesitation. After all, when the film purchasing team of China Film Group left, a preliminary version of the cooperation document was attached, along with a script outline of Pacific Rim and the research expectations of the target audience market. It can be said that a lot of things can be judged from it. It is not difficult to see that Firefly really wants to cooperate. Lemon also wants to use this series to deepen its influence and distribution business capabilities in Asia, so the terms proposed have taken China Film Group into consideration. In other words, while making friends with partners of interest, concentrating advantages and resources, and jointly expanding the pie of interests, helping yourself, however, Pacific Rim is expected to cost at least 150 million yuan in production funds, and China Film must invest at least 50 million US dollars. It seems that it is not so easy to make up your mind. After finishing the conversation with Lyman, near noon, a middle-aged white man in his 40s sat in Lyman's office. This is Damon, a talent that Joseph poached from masses to be responsible for the channel promotion of Marvel clothing. He officially took office last Friday. In addition to the basic annual salary of 3 million, the salary structure that will be linked to the profit of clothing is also the reason why he made up his mind to change jobs. Boss, I plan to go to China tomorrow to learn about our OEM factories there, as well as the styles and quality of clothes, and determine the corresponding wholesale prices. In addition, we still have too few stores of our own. There are only 4 high consumption cities on the east and west coasts. The gap is very large, and this part also needs to be managed well. Damon spent some time handing over the work, initially familiar with the business of Marvel clothing, and soon got into the state and began to tell his ideas from the direction of operation. Don't worry, we will support you in whatever you want to do. By the way, most of our products are casualty shirts, which are very low cost, averaging $2 per piece, and the selling price is about $33. Do you think the market will be big? Damon thought carefully for a while and replied, the price range is low to mid-range, and the main target audience is young people. There are many competitive clothing brands, but our advantage is that we can use the popularity of the movie and the element of superheroes to develop the fan market. Even if we don't necessarily occupy a high share, it shouldn't be difficult to gain a foothold. In the future, if we gradually change from relying on distribution to direct sales and expand the profit range, the revenue may be considerable. In short, you just need to take care of these things. You don't have to worry about the movie. I will be very satisfied if every project I cooperate with to promote can give fans an extra consumption choice. Lemon didn't think about becoming the new king of the clothing market. He didn't have high requirements for this area. Anyway, it's also about cultivating fans and making money from fans. The two chatted briefly. Damon said goodbye and left, and Lemon began to review documents again. The teams stationed in various overseas regions will arrive at their posts in the spring of next year, but before that, the arrangements for allowances and salaries have already begun, and he needs to sign the expenditure documents one by one. When he finished all this, it was already very lively outside. After the promotion of Avatar, a large amount of funds were spent, and it soon attracted the hearts of countless audiences. Cameron's new film, the unparalleled visual spectacle, and the first film shot entirely with 3D technology, all of these publicity highlights have aroused the audience's expectations. The much talked about projection specifications, such as the IMAX Theater Plus 3D viewing template, have long been emphasized by theater operators countless times. According to theater operators, if Avatar is not watched with IMAX projection equipment, it is impossible to enjoy the most extreme visual experience. Of course, IMAX theaters are new after all, and the number of them cannot be compared with that of ordinary theaters. In fact, when this theory of watching movies was spread everywhere, the tickets for IMAX theaters released by several major ticketing websites in the United States were booked 1 week after the release. Even so, many viewers are still trying to experience the so-called deep immersion. In the past, many viewers would choose to watch an IMAX theater after watching Avatar in ordinary theaters, which is also one of the factors for the box office explosion. From this perspective, technological progress can indeed generate huge profit margins. Similar novel experiences and repeated broadcasts of information channels are the basis for this effect. Fortunately, everyone has the same purpose and does a good job. Like Lemon, he found himself surrounded by the news of the release of Avatar when he went out for a walk, not to mention the movie fans who like to surf the internet on weekdays, who must have been receiving good information about the film. However, in the film market environment that is being hyped, at the end of the year, the Oscar-winning films gradually dominated the mainstream screen, and because of the subject matter market, the box office was not outstanding. Previously popular films like 2012 are gradually losing their momentum. I'm Legend is about to be released with a North American box office of $314 million and a global box office of $737 million. The whole of North America seems to be waiting for Avatar to save the market. At this time, the North American market is less than 90 million, a 34% drop from the same period last year, which is relatively sluggish. After learning that the internal preview of Avatar was very good, other studios did not dare to send their masterpieces to compete with it. Among them, the mood of Disney executives is undoubtedly the most complicated. In order to win over Cameron, they offered so many conditions and helped him shoot several 3D documentary experimental films. As a result, because the project expenditure exceeded expectations, they did not have the courage and were taken over by Lyman. The key is that it seems to be quite successful, which is the most annoying. Making a movie, how can you have confidence before the finished product comes out? It's all a gamble. What's more dramatic is that Disney backed down at the last minute. If Avatar performs well, then it's no surprise that in addition to these winners, Disney will also be repeatedly ridiculed by industry insiders as a negative example of a loser in their spare time. However, at this time of rising emotions of joy, sadness, or expectation, David Fincher inexplicably received an invitation. Firefly wants me to direct a movie. When David heard about Firefly, he could only remember the unhappy look on Pitt's face when he shook his head. This guy and Pitt are old partners. Of course, as a director, he would definitely not give a reply without knowing anything when he met a strong studio. Tell me more, man. Chapter 943 Absurd Black Humor. Please subscribe and vote. In a study room with exquisite decoration, sunlight shines through the glass of the window, pouring into the room, leaving shadows. At this moment, David Fincher, wearing a plaid shirt, sits beside the desk with his head down, but he is daydreaming. The desk is piled with literary works and documents, but the most conspicuous one is the spread out book with the cover of Gone Girl, which is like a night fog that slowly makes people feel depressed. If it were an ordinary person seeing such a script, it would probably be a plot design with revenge around marriage, which is nothing surprising, but David Fincher's heart is already burning. He likes the black element produced by the fatalistic misunderstanding between people, that is, the blurred boundaries between good and evil. This is a major feature of David's movies, and it is also a frequent theme in his Black Scar movies. These black elements are also designed quite cleverly in Gone Girl. First, the kind-hearted people deduce the condemnation of the man's cheating and killing his pregnant wife, based on self-righteous clues before the facts were proven. Second, the misunderstanding, malice, and disgust between a pair of lovers about their relationship and each other. The shell containing these scenes that make people think about good and evil has created a wonderful black story. A highly intelligent wife fakes murder and frames her husband when the husband is about to save himself with the help of his lawyer and sister and break through public opinion. The wife returns to the public eye by killing another person and pretends to be pitiful to gain sympathy and once again guides public opinion to lock her husband at home. At the end of the story, when the husband is forced to continue to live in the same room with his wife as a couple and raise children, the ending is the finishing touch, helpless and absurd, and the dramatic effect is full. The flow of ideas may be what is happening to David now. After he absolutely looked at the script, he has been thinking about the narrative structure and the effect of the film. As a director, or a director with a strong personal style that forms an imprint, he likes what he likes very much, and disdains what he doesn't like. Of course, he has the ability to review the script. Furthermore, his career as a director was not smooth sailing. He was also an advertising director. Before entering the film industry, he had worked for many singers and luxury brands. Then, although the Fight Club that made him famous had a good reputation, it was not profitable from a commercial perspective. No wonder they invited me. David Fincher leaned back in his chair and said to himself, I really like this script. Lyman is not only a good director, but also has a good vision. Is that true? A few days after the script was handed over, David Fincher's agent team started to move, as expected. In the Firefly building, Lyman was handling some official business, but not long after, his assistant Maze came in to report that the negotiation work had come to an end. Boss, Jan is outside. Well, please ask him to come in. After a while, a short white man in his 30s stood aside respectfully. Sit down. Lyman looked at him. He was very calm. Lyman thought, this task should be fine if it is given to him. This producer, who had just joined the company for less than half a year, had supervised multiple projects in previous studios and had quite a lot of experience. However, if he wanted to integrate into the production team of Firefly, he would definitely need some opportunities to prove himself. "Are you Jan Robert?" "I am, boss," Jan said. "You've joined the company for more than 5 months. Are you used to it?" "Very used to it," Jan said frankly, "but if possible, I hope to participate more in the production business." Lemon picked up a resume. "What do you think of the project Gone Girl? You were just discussing the salary with director David's agent, right?" "Yes. If we analyze the audience of the movie, according to the initial plan of the project, David Fincher was invited to direct it. The company must want to take a long-term approach and attach great importance to the quality of the movie. The main target audience should be those who like storytelling, rather than special effects. The age group will be more mature, mostly around 30 years old." As he spoke, John took out the first version of the director's contract and handed it to Lemon. "Besides, his agent is very strong. After all, David's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button was a huge success some time ago. With such an invitation, they have a strong bargaining chip to raise the price, so they are determined to participate in the box office sharing." Lemon took the contract, skipped the template, and saw the composition of the director's salary. In addition to the basic salary of $14 million, a 10% global profit share was proposed. "What is his salary composition in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button?" Lemon put down the contract and asked. "It's 1/3 less than this, mainly because the 10% global share is a bit too much. Can we continue the discussion?" "I'll try my best. But judging from their intentions, the share ratio may be reduced, but the room for concession will not be very large. He has the capital to participate in the share, but we can talk about it according to the terms of the ladder nature, with the highest ratio of 8% and 500 million worldwide." "Yes, boss." Jan thought that this price range could still be negotiated. "Then arrange it this way, you will be the first producer of this project. By the way, the preliminary schedule of the project is early September next year, with a budget of $60 million, and the shooting period is still very relaxed." "Yes, boss." Jan was happy. At Firefly, the income composition of the management of the production department is linked to the performance of specific projects. As long as Gone Girl can make a profit, he can also get a considerable bonus. But you have to remember your scope of responsibility. If there is no problem, don't interfere with how the crew shoots. Your main task is to control expenses, logistics management, and arrange accommodation and food. "I understand." After joining Firefly, Jan discovered that Firefly's production system is director-centered. Although he thinks that giving most of the power to directors, who are easily emotional and impulsive, will cause unnecessary waste and losses, the big boss himself is a director. No matter what happens, the producer also controls the crew's account, so it is not easy to encounter irrational people. The tone has been set, and Gone Girl is a medium invested project, and the director's expenses are the bulk of it, so naturally it can't afford to hire first-line actors. In fact, David Fincher got an accurate reply from his agent, and knew that the matter had been settled. He immediately started to work on the storyboard and the preparation of the crew behind the scenes. He had long forgotten that Pitt had abused him several times and said that he was targeted by Firefly. After all, targeting itself is a fictitious thing. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 944. Its purpose is to break the routine. While David Fincher was preparing to build a crew and select actors, the release date of Avatar was getting closer and closer. From the audience's perspective, apart from those explosive gimmicks, Cameron himself is also a golden signboard. Especially many people have been deeply influenced by films such as Titanic and Terminator since childhood. So on December 15th, people gathered early in the morning and were enthusiastic to go to the premiere to watch the ceremony. When we arrived near the Chinese Grand Theater, they were still preparing to decorate the venue, and many fans had already rushed over with the same idea. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they hurried to join in, and the scene gradually became noisy. "Hey, did you get tickets for the IMAX theater?" someone asked. "No, but I reserved a ticket for an ordinary theater. And is the IMAX theater really as good as they say? The last time I watched an animated 3D plus IMAX show, I didn't feel very good." Some people disagreed. For the audience, if they want to distinguish what is post-production conversion and fully understand the information of these films, they will inevitably be confused. In fact, post-production conversion is not completely useless. It is just that it is a shortcut after all. In order to save money and reduce risks, but want to increase the box office by 3D version, how can it be better than the real investment? At the red carpet, show in the evening, the stars are shining, and the momentum is naturally deafening. However, a luxury cinema on Hollywood Sunset Boulevard a few blocks away does not have such an atmosphere. At the door, Robin was chatting with his friend Chris while checking tickets. Although they are not professional film critics who write columns, they have posted many reviews of film works on Rotten Tomatoes. Robin asked, "Have you heard that the preview of Avatar was very good, and the theaters think it will perform well?" "I don't care about whether it performs well or not. I'm here to see a movie today. I only care about the charm of the so-called first 3D movie. At least before I experienced it, I couldn't imagine how great the experience would be. For this, I used my connections to buy tickets for the IMAX giant screen. They are 70% more expensive than ordinary tickets. I have to see that it is worth buying." After checking the tickets, the two middle-aged men continued to walk forward and arrived at theater number 1, where a poster of Avatar was spray-painted at the door. Facing the Na'vi in the poster, whose nose and eyes are white, and whose features are still those of an actor, but are obviously the product of CG modeling, Robin's tone of voice rose significantly. "The shooting cost is $240 million, and the marketing cost is at least $150 million. There are also rumors that Firefly spent more than $200 million to invest in it, paying off the losses of Disney and Weta Digital's experimental technology. This is really a big deal. So much money was thrown in the blink of an eye." To be honest, as an online film critic who has appreciated many movies and has gradually become influential, the cost expenditure is so large. Even if Hollywood's high-budget movies continue to break the production ceiling, I still feel a chill. If Avatar fails, for most of the small studios on the market, it will go bankrupt and become another negative example in film history. I don't know whether this movie will reach the top as some people think, or will achieve magnificent fall. It's really exciting. Before the calm of the storm, Lyman is also continuing to build momentum with the main creators of Avatar. This is a grand event that attracts domestic and foreign media. Not only are there too many topics to report, and the audience likes it, but it is also the first scene to witness the first budget blockbuster in film history. At the premiere, with the best efforts of the promotion teams of Columbia and Blue Butterfly, more than 200 domestic and foreign reporters from The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Entertainment Weekly, The Times, Le Figaro and other media reflected on this moment. It seems that Columbia also takes this movie seriously, doesn't it? Someone from the dispatched team of Variety laughed. After all, this is Cameron's movie, and he has created too many miracles. A supporter replied, "Oh, but he won't be so lucky every time." Some people smiled contemptuously. Some film critics who respect film traditions, story is king, have always disliked Cameron, believing that no matter how outstanding such a director's achievements are, he is no different from Michael Bay and his ilk, and is just a technical processor. Even some film critics who like Lyman say that he is getting more and more unprofessional, referring to too many commercial films shot with special effects. What you say doesn't count. The audience's taste is the most important. What progress can we make by just catering to the audience? Boring arguments while waiting. In every corner of the world, the audience has proved with their actions that Cameron has the confidence to call him king of the world. It is obvious that not only the cold movie market in the United States has become hot, but American audiences are not the only ones who are upset by the news that Avatar is about to be released. "Senator Kun, can I invite you to the movies tomorrow?" Over the phone, the girl in love invited the boy she liked. "Oh, Atom, you rarely go to the movies, right?" "Yeah." The girl was shy for a moment, but still mustered up the courage to say, "It's Avatar. I remember that you, Sanada-kun, like Cameron's movies very much." The girl looked at the TV in the room, which was showing the film information preheated by the Japanese agent in advance. I want to watch a movie with Sanada-kun. The Japanese film market has always been relatively closed, and it is normal for the introduction of films to be delayed for a year or two, but this time, with Columbia's strong public relations and resource investment, the screening of Avatar was not delayed. Hurry up and prepare. IMAX tickets are not easy to buy. In South Korea, there are also many people who organize movie watching, even because of the complex feelings formed by the domestic people, based on the love and hatred of the United States. They have no strong resistance to some Hollywood blockbusters, not to mention Cameron's new work that once swept the Korean film industry. With a huge audience, there are also many enthusiastic fans. This is also the most direct expression of the considerable appeal of international directors, and influence is not measured by one region. Therefore, this is also the reason why some directors seem to have good performance in a short period of time, but their status cannot keep up. If you only win the love of domestic audiences, fans in other regions will not know you. Look, Lyman. In France, the main publicity of Avatar is of course the investor Lyman last. This is not surprising. For capitalists, of course, they will promote what is beneficial. According to statistics, the director who is most respected by the French people is Lyman, whether it is The Intouchables which has been at the top of the list so far, or as their most outstanding commercial director, with a reputation bonus. The result is that with Lyman's signboard, it is easy to arouse people's desire to watch movies. Chapter 945, Avatar, Part 1. I hope to see a good movie, so that my trip will not be in vain. The guests gradually filled the hall and the lights went dark. With the faint sound of the projector running behind the screen, the number 10 appeared in the center of the screen, just like the special effects of old movies. Neria, a columnist for Variety, adjusted his sitting posture and put all the distractions behind him. But he soon understood why the theater chain operators could arrange the screening of Avatar with such specifications, and where their confidence came from. In fact, when the giant countdown sign from 3 to 1 at the beginning of the movie attacked him, he felt a breath different from other commercial masterpieces. Only seeing this digital opening, in many movies, many high investment special effects shots are not as shocking as this one. And this opening also seems to endorse the technology of the entire movie. At least for Neria, watching it on a giant screen like IMAX is indeed a novel experience and enjoyment. The corresponding technology is matched with the corresponding movie. He even thought that, if Hollywood wanted to vigorously promote this viewing mode, the problem it might face was how to continue to reduce costs. After all, this was an unavoidable hurdle for both theaters and studios. High costs were the biggest obstacle. Wow. The audience couldn't help but exclaimed in surprise. It was really that Avatar used an unreasonable and fast-moving shot as the opening. Although this was not the first movie to use a high-altitude flying perspective, with the addition of technology and giant screens, the landscape of the other world, that seemed to have been processed by CG, but was very real when looked at closely, was too beautiful and even fantastic, just like a picture scroll slowly unfolding. Not to mention the immersive feeling that made people's heart beat faster. It was as if they were sliding at high speed, accelerating down, and the whole scene was coming towards them, making people experience the feeling of weightlessness in an elevator, and speeding in a car, and even the body instinctively had some stress reactions. Neria couldn't describe the feeling, but he was indeed shocked, even shouting out. Although he was not an ordinary audience, but a filmmaker who had seen the world, he had no extra experience in front of Avatar. On the screen, the camera swooped down from the sky above the tropical rainforest and flew into the depths of the jungle. With the narration of the protagonist Jack, a transition, the subsequent rainforest style has become a dazzling future urban style. With advanced technology, humans have the ability to explore the stars. Digital appliances are extremely cheap, with a bit of dystopian science fiction. The protagonist Jack is a retired veteran who was disabled on duty. He is facing the problem of having no money for spinal repair surgery. Every day he sits in a wheelchair like a zombie, living a self-destructive life. In terms of setting, The character's beginning is too old-fashioned, but it also reflects that in the technological age, it is still impossible for all human beings to enjoy the welfare they deserve, and there is still a gap in social resources. Neria watched Jack's brave act in the bar and couldn't help but analyze the content as usual and complained. Although he was still immersed in Cameron's naked showmanship and special effects, and felt that the design of the background story was pretty good, Cameron has never paid attention to exploring the point of the character, and he is still as rude and straightforward as before. Jack's personality was almost finalized at the beginning. He has a sense of justice. However, who cares about the characters when watching Cameron's movies? This kind of real and illusory CG shots are already dazzling. From the visual effects point of view, he has taught the world a lesson in special effects commercial films. Neria wrote a sentence in his notebook with emotion. This is a scene we have never seen on the screen. The standard is so high that, if I go back to watch 2012, I can't bear it. If I have to say the gap between them, it may be as wide as the Pacific Ocean. There are currently less than 150 IMAX screens in the United States. This is because after the internal preview of Avatar, theater operators invested more funds to replace projection equipment. In fact, 3D movies are not a new thing. Star Trek, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince and Transformers 2 have all provided 3D copies. Of course, they are all purely post-converted. If we have to say that the big screen projection of the above mentioned films is fundamentally different from the small screen projection in ordinary theaters, it has never appeared. On the contrary, due to the problem of line of sight focal length, watching movies on the giant screen is a bit unnatural. The comfort has not been improved much, but has regressed. The audience needs to overcome their own visual habits, especially when watching close-ups of characters in converted films. It is quite unpleasant to be completely covered by a face on the giant screen. As for pure CGI movies, live-action animations, such as the Polar Express and Beowulf, they also face the soulless uncanny valley effect of Final Fantasy, which makes people feel so strong that they want to give up, and are not recognized and accepted by the mainstream. In other words, before the appearance of Avatar, all the IMAX plus 3D versions had more or less problems. Before Cameron filmed Avatar, he had thought about and experimented on how to make the audience feel comfortable, so that the giant screen was not just a simple enlargement, but changed the form of the entire film. Compared with ordinary theaters, the giant screen will make the details of the film clearer and the camera movement more natural. Moreover, these different degrees of enlargement combined with 3D visual effects will make the audience feel very innovative, which is a different experience from watching so many movies before. Therefore, even if the characters and plots are pale and the templates for advancement are quite old-fashioned, everyone's excitement is always there. This fully illustrates the characteristics of director Cameron, cliched but not cliched. Whether it is a long shot of the spacecraft flying to Pandora among the stars, the cinemarang with neat exclamations again, or Jack waking up in the space capsule, the daily life of the spacecraft in the weightless state, it is fascinating. The sound and picture of Avatar are enough to make people ignore many of the shallowness of the creation, and be deeply fascinated by this kind of wonders. Perhaps, it is precisely because everyone has watched too many movies, that movies like Avatar, that can make progress in visual effects again will make people praise from the bottom of their hearts. To put it more psychologically, classic works with strong stories, novel narrative methods, and complex structures that cannot be understood without watching them several times have not been experienced. Even if there is another one, apart from applauding, will there be any extra feelings? No. But Avatar can give everyone a very novel stimulation, because this is something that other special effects movies can't do, and it has never appeared before. It's like a peerless beauty seen in a hurry. It's hard for people to resist the urge to explore further. Chapter 946, Avatar, Part 2. 20 minutes later, when the avatar in the title of Avatar appeared on the screen for the first time, the theater was once again filled with low murmurs of commotion. This blue-skinned big guy looked so real and lively, and it didn't have the hollow feeling of Final Fantasy at all. Deep down, I didn't even want to think it was a CG product, because it looked like a living creature different from the human race, and it seemed that such aliens already lived on Pandora. Cameron did it. He really did it. This bad-tempered bastard really stood at the forefront of the times again, Nerya muttered to himself for the second time. If the previous visual effects technology was shocking enough, then the moment when Avatar appeared was too shocking. How did this happen? When Jack entered the Avatar with his will, got familiar with the body that could run and jump, and interacted with his companions around him, it was incredible that he merged with the environment without any stiffness. Movies like Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings, which also create a world system, have a lot of special effects shots and subversive visual effects, but they still need artificial scenery. After entering Pandora, Avatar even makes people wonder if there is anything that does not need special effects. Those flowers, trees, those luminous plants, those ecological environments that are obviously different from the Earth. If there are such places in the world for the crew to shoot, then Nerya is sure that he is willing to spend money to see it, because it is really incredible. Not only visual enjoyment, but also some refreshing feelings will arise in the heart. It is very open, as if seeing the sea for the first time. Even in the next scene, Jack went on a mission for the first time, sitting in a helicopter and flying down the waterfall. Even though he knew that this was watching a movie, because it was an experience of substitution, it was completely a magical journey of exploring another world. However, the purpose of the exploration journey is not so positive and pure. In the base where Jack went, the development of Pandora was divided into two factions. It happened that he was invited by the hardliners to sneak into the Na'vi tribe and be a spy. In other words, the protagonist seemed to stand in the camp of the villains. This is a position that is easy to guess. Cameron did not hide his plot direction at all. Of course, it is precisely because the plot is simple that the audience can devote their energy to appreciating the wonders of Pandora. Otherwise, if the story is too obscure, the viewing process will not be so refreshing and clear, and the time for moving eyes is more than that for moving brains. From the beginning to now, Avatar has been attracting everyone to watch with unconventional novel visual effects. To be honest, just shaping the ecological environment of Pandora has made people feel that it is worth the price. Some people even hope that the plot will advance slower and have more scenery descriptions. However, the subsequent twists and turns of the thrilling chase scene still make people feel that the CG is a little unnatural. For example, the beasts do not seem to have the energy of Avatar's smart modeling, and it is obviously not in this aspect. It's already pretty good. Seeing this scene, Nerya was relieved. Because for CG lenses, especially for the visual sense presented by realistic style movies, the audience's sensitivity is very high. For example, in the scene where Legolas killed the giant elephant in The Lord of the Rings, the giant elephant's performance was also very stiff, but this stiffness would generally be skipped by the audience, unless it appeared too frequently. From this perspective, the technical application of Avatar is still limited, and it has not reached the level of Nerya's complete understanding of incompetence. And watching Jack's thrilling escape while being chased, the audience did not arouse too much tension, because everyone who watched Cameron's movies knew that the protagonist would not die, unlike a certain studio that always likes to kill the male protagonist to increase the atmosphere of drama. Sure enough, in this great escape, when Jack jumped off the cliff and fell into the waterfall, he avoided the beast crisis. Although he lost his way in the primitive jungle and spent the night alone, these old-fashioned designs did not make the audience feel bored at all under the embellishment of the beautiful scenery of Pandora. Later, Jack made a foolish move in the fire he started attracted a new group of beasts. When the situation was critical, it was also the best time to introduce new characters. With his excellent shooting skills, a female Na'vi walked out of the darkness, accompanied by the exclamation of the audience. Yes, the film was shown for more than 40 minutes before the heroine played by Eve made her first appearance. In the eyes of film critics like Nerya, he also quickly understood that Eva seemed to have no shots showing her face, because her performance was not that of an Earthling who entered Pandora as an avatar, but a real native population. Almost instantly, such an analytical idea passed through Nerya's mind, but for some ordinary audiences, the reason for their exclamation was just because Nitari played by Eva had an inexplicable exotic beauty. Even Lyman could see that director Cameron preferred it. Although the female Navi incarnation of Jack's companion had already appeared at the basketball court, Neytiri's modeling was so detailed that it could be distinguished by the naked eye. Eva's facial features could be found in it. Even though the Nami tribe is said to have a pair of yellow pupils like cat's eyes, the shape of the cheeks, the somewhat tough facial features, and the stubborn and enchanting temperament can all be well highlighted. Haha, this modeling took a lot of effort and was also very expensive, because the more detailed and more anthropomorphic it is, the more CG it costs. From the perspective of visual feedback, she does not look like an insignificant character, but a real alien beauty. And her appearance also sets off how unfair the treatment of other supporting characters is. When Neytiri snatched the torch and threw it into the water to extinguish it, the wildness and coldness can be well conveyed through the contraction and expansion of her eyes and the lifting of her nose. After all, no matter how to explain this shock, the use of CG technology costs money for every frame. The more expressions and the more agile, the more it costs. A very cruel fact is that the reason why many supporting characters are not agile is just because the crew did not spend money on them, or in other words, they are not the ones that stand out. This is indeed the case. After finishing the filming, Eva, who sat next to Lyman, said that her motion capture simulation scenes were several times more than other characters, even more than the protagonist. This is actually a way for Cameron to express his intimacy. He is not ignorant of the ways of the world. When Lyman recommended Eva, a first-line actress, to play Neytiri without showing her face, and generously supported the budget, he naturally focused on it. In other words, Cameron himself couldn't get over the stiff shooting. When he was in trouble, it was Lyman who sent a large sum of money and sufficient trust. Although he didn't say it, he was still very touched. Chapter 947, Avatar, Part 2. Plankton-like fluorescent jellyfish float in the air, beautiful beyond words. Cameron's characteristic is to make the commercial side of commercial movies to the extreme. So when Jack stayed with Neytiri for a long time and lived in the Navi for a while, he also discovered the purpose of this infiltration operation. The researchers on Earth discovered a magical ore on Pandora, and in the process of searching for the veins, they were attacked by the Navi. The reason why the Navi are hostile to the visitors from Earth is precisely because the ore they mined is the source of life on Pandora. Knowing all this, and personally feeling the purity and beauty of the world different from the Earth, Jack's position is constantly changing and shaking. The beautiful scenery and contradictions are interspersed with foreshadowing, making the audience dazzled and dare not leave the screen for a second. In the end, after the hardline of the hardliners was destined to be unconvincing, Jack, who had been thinking about the future of the two planets, made up his mind and stood on the side of the bullied. He knew that his chances were slim, but his conversation with Neytiri made him understand that some things that were done but not done were also recognized. The two rode on the big bird and soared in the sky. Neytiri asked Jack why he came to Pandora, and Jack told her about his past and why he lost his legs after an explosion on the edge of a collapsing building. You know explosions? Boom, boom, just like the scene that happens when mining ore. The rocks will break and the houses will fall. I should have left the dangerous area, but when I was retreating, I seemed to see the back of a child in the ruins. He stood there as if he didn't notice the crisis at all. Then I ran over and wanted to help him, but it was actually just a coat draped over the back of a chair. I would have paid for my own misjudgment with my leg's weight. What is a chair? Neytiri asked with big eyes. I said that I used to have 2 machetes in my hands and chopped from Nanshanman all the way to Penglay East Road. I chopped back and forth for 3 days and 3 nights, and the blood flowed like a river. But I just kept slashing, 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 without blinking. And you only care if my eyes are sore. But she was so curious that her ears perked up. In the laughter of the audience, the pessimism was immediately diluted. Jack laughed at himself. Honestly, how likely is it that a child is standing in an evacuated building? I'm not calm enough. But you didn't give up this 1 in 10,000 possibility. Neytiri's expression softened. You did the right thing. Jack, who had broken his heart, seemed to have infinite courage. In order to give the Navi people confidence, he even stood on the top of the cliff, ready to conquer the myth of the Navi people, the Kingbird. Looking at the clouds below, the long lost narration sounded again. I have never been a great person. My life is a mess, but I just don't want to miss this one in 10,000 possibility. In the heroic soundtrack, Jack saw the kingbird appear and jumped down from the sky. The process of taming the kingbird was not so easy. The kingbird tried to flip Jack off its back several times, but in this competition, it was Jack's tenacity that made the kingbird choose to surrender. Under the Tree of Life, the Na'vi people were still worried about the start of the war. The domineering roar of the kingbird announced Jack's return. To be honest, Cameron's grasp of the coolness is still very good. The effect of first suppressing and then raising makes the audience follow this blue-skinned big man with a surge of emotions. In this way, the Na'vi people fought against the steel armor torrent of the hardliners of the base for their homeland. As the kingbird was tamed, they were given great courage, and the last battle also started vigorously. On one hand, there are the Na'vi tribe's strongest firepower point sky troops, riding big birds, using arrows or flying spears, and on the other hand, there are tanks, combat helicopters and ace soldiers wearing armor sent by the base. Logically speaking, the military value on the Earth side should be higher, but Cameron gave Jack a cheat, and the Kingbird's combat power is almost invincible in the air. So most of the words in this last 20 minutes of the decisive battle are to set off Jack and highlight the protagonist. However, because it is very well made, the audience's mood is still ups and downs like riding a roller coaster, and until the last moment, the audience's heart is always lifted. Nothing more than the kernel of the base starting to use tricks. Since I can't beat the Avatar, can't I control the body lying in the cabin? Fortunately, Jack also has supporters in the human camp, and not all scientific researchers want to use war to obtain resources. Ending, the male supporting actor sacrificed himself to complete the slightly sensational drama of the film, and also allowed the Na'vi people to successfully protect the Tree of Life and resist the attack. Jack was completely transformed into a Na'vi, stayed on Pandora, and abandoned his Earth citizenship. When Jack's incarnation avatar's eyes suddenly opened, the yellow vertical pupils occupied the screen, the background music sounded, and the screen went black. The film ended. For a moment, the cinema was still quiet and no one spoke, but soon, someone started it, and the whole theater burst into warm and deafening applause. Critics like Unaria applauded from the bottom of their hearts to express their emotions. More enthusiastic audiences were already whistling and shouting Cameron's name to express their appreciation. It's so well shot, the incomparable Pandora. Such visual effects, such immersion, such a big screen viewing method, such unique sound and picture substitution. How could such a movie not be successful? He did it, man. I mean, Cameron is the king of the movie world. The atmosphere of fanaticism and passion was rising, and the reporters even forgot that their equipment was still in the hands of the security personnel, and could not help but run to the front row to interview the creators of this miracle. On December 19th, 1997, a big ship that was not optimistic about the future experienced many filming interruptions, gambled on a director's career, and achieved great success, and let the world witness the love between Rose and Jack. On December 15th, 2009, 12 years later, Cameron set sail again, bucking the trend and adopting new filming technology, spending $500 million to produce Avatar. During this period, Disney withdrew its investment and Universal avoided it again, but all kinds of trouble still failed to defeat him. From the reaction of the theater, from the perspective of the audience, if the internal preview made the theater chain and Columbia feel that they could take a chance, then this time it clearly told everyone that it conquered the hearts of the audience. It did it. Chapter 948. After the screening. Perhaps, after watching it, I believe the slogan on the promotional poster, "Beyond Imagination." This is indeed beyond my imagination. Congratulations, James, you have completed another masterpiece. It is absolutely unique in terms of visual effects so far. At the interview after the film, the reporter from Le Figaro got the first right to ask questions, and as he spoke, other newspaper reporters in the venue spontaneously applauded, expressing their recognition of Avatar. But we also know that this movie is very expensive. Before seeing the finished film, everyone may be wondering how such a sum of money was spent. After all, the expenditure on actors in this play is really not much, but now I think everyone's doubts should be the opposite. Is 350 million enough for such a grand visual enjoyment? Suddenly, everyone on and off the stage fell into laughter as of the premiere. Firefly did not disclose the cost of the film. Many things were guesses given by industry insiders based on the filming process, and the reporter from Le Figaro obviously wanted to know the specific cost of Avatar, which is actually a good news point, especially under the high cost. The completion of the film is very high. In other words, the newspaper that came all the way from Paris, France, to show its support was very smart to choose a win-win and less annoying question. The numbers circulating outside are indeed somewhat different from our expenses. Joseph, president of Man Media, took over the conversation with understanding, but there is one thing that many people have guessed correctly. Avatar is indeed the most expensive movie so far. The total expenditure of Firefly is at least over 600 million. The promotion period is far from over, but we are very confident that the project can make a profit. 600 million and more. The reporters were excited. So, will Avatar have a sequel? I noticed that this ending seems to be left blank. There are still many things to talk about around the development of Pandora, and the protagonist Jack also stayed there and did not return to Earth with the team. The reporter from the Times asked, if the box office is ideal, we should start the sequel. Part of the huge amount of money spent on this movie is to construct the scenes of the future city in Pandora. It has left us with a legacy worth tens of millions of dollars that can be reused. We don't plan to throw it into the garbage dump after filming. Besides, the story of Avatar is indeed not finished. Will it still be directed by Mr. Cameron? We all know that the recent Terminator 2018 inches was shot very badly, and the audience didn't buy it. This is still a very mature series. Even if I don't direct, I will be the producer. The situation of Avatar is different from that of Terminator. Cameron didn't want to talk much about this aspect, but in fact everyone knows that the control of Terminator is no longer in the hands of this director who took care of everything from the script to the shooting scene. Of course, facing this masterpiece, reporters have too many things to ask, so this topic is just skipped. By the way, Firefly will become the investor of this project, taking over from Disney. There are rumors that it is the result of your full support. May I ask, what role do you think you played in such a process? Most of the time, Lyman avoids being exposed to the spotlight too much in his life, which is harmful to a director. A director should let his works speak for themselves. But at this moment, he also knows that he should stand up at the right time. What attracted me was the shooting concept that pushed the film into the 3D era. Of course, I'm just a member of the production team and did not play a special role in the shooting. Perhaps the biggest role was in providing funds, but I did a good job in this regard. The reporters all laughed, and John Landor also added, Lyman's strong support is the biggest factor in the smooth shooting of this film. Although it was unnecessary. You said that the concept of 3D shooting attracted you to invest in the Avatar project. As a director who is also world renowned, what do you think of the future of 3D shooting? A reporter caught the core of the conversation and asked again. I think it will become mainstream, just like digital photography replaced film. As a filmmaker, you may have discovered that the new generation of audiences are increasingly fond of games, television, and YouTube as a means of entertainment. If one day the film industry does not make any progress, this trend will become more and more obvious, so we have to use some specific technologies to attract audiences. In other words, what you can feel in the cinema should be different from what you feel at home. This is true for 3D, special effects, and IMAX giant screens. Differentiated experience is the future development path of the film market. Of course, I'm not saying that there is no need for a good story. Although Avatar is doing subtraction, who says that a simple story is not good to watch? From the perspective of an investor, can you talk about the prospects and source of confidence for Avatar? The source of our confidence is that after so many years of market incubation, special effects blockbusters are the type with the highest possibility of becoming a hit worldwide. Although other themes are not without a market, special effects as the most intuitive visual experience have become a common excitement point for global audiences. There is no doubt that In this regard, Avatar has an incomparable advantage. If anything, Avatar has no shortage of soil and environment for its explosion. Excuse me, what is your and your team's box office estimate for Avatar? Lemon glanced at Cameron and said without hesitation, it will set a new record for the box office charts. A low exclamation sounded at the reception. Perhaps they all just realized that Firefly's expectations were so high. You mean, director Cameron will break his own record and set a new record of $2.1 billion for Titanic? Yes. Does that number sound incredible? That was a record from 12 years ago. 12 years later, ticket prices are higher, there are more screens, and the market value of movies is increasing year by year. Logically speaking, the height of the ceiling has long been higher. The reporters thought about this director who also broke the ceiling in France with The Untouchables, and they seemed to find that they were indeed convinced. At least from a market perspective, it was true. Not to mention that the ticket prices in the IMAX theater were also higher than those of ordinary theaters, which was also a plus. It's a very fresh view, but we all know that the popular Harry Potter series and even the Spider-Man trilogy in recent years have relied on a huge fan base, but they still haven't reached their ceiling. Can an original project really have such high expressiveness? Isn't the combination of me and James a global guarantee? Lemon smiled innocently. HMM. Comparing fans? Chapter 949 First Day. The 162-minute visual enjoyment, the fast-paced plot from the beginning to the end, and the lack of brain cells to think about the structure and direction. This is the spiritual pleasure that the audience of the midnight show felt from Avatar. Of course, these things are the necessary element of most successful commercial films. They are not very interesting, nor can they be savored for a long time after watching them, turning into a flash in the depths of memory, but at least watching movies in the IMAX theater is indeed a rare and unprecedented experience. Therefore, in the real-time questionnaire survey after the screening, the satisfaction of Avatar is definitely a bright data among the same type. More than 80% of them are rated A+, and the negative reviews can even be calculated in single digits. After a night of rendering, both Columbia and the distribution team of Blue Butterfly understand what the discussion boom on the internet means. With proper guidance and appropriate use of Water Army to divert traffic, Avatar has become a hotly discussed movie in the United States when it is released the next day. Lemon likes this feeling. Although he only plays a role of an investor, his sense of accomplishment is still very high for this matter alone. Are you sincere when you say that? In the room, Lemon, who had just gotten up after 3 in the morning and cleaned himself up, heard Eva asking while holding a few newspapers. After all, Avatar was outstanding and recognized by the audience, and as the heroine, she must be more satisfied and happier. Just like last night, she was more active than Lemon, and this might be part of the reason. It's just that, in the middle of the night, the passion hasn't subsided yet. When Lemon sat next to her, Eva naturally changed her position and sat diagonally on his lap, and Lemon naturally understood what she was asking. It was the newspaper that published his prediction at the press conference that the box office of Avatar would exceed that of Titanic. Why, you don't have confidence in yourself. This is your play. That being said, if the reporter asks me, I will definitely say something supportive, but privately, right, 2 billion is still a bit too far away. In fact, my psychological expectation is about 1.5 billion, which is already very high. Seeing Eva's serious analysis, blah 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 talking about the reasons for the 1.5 billion performance, Lemon had to follow her thoughts and said, it's okay, even if the box office is not as high as I said, it's just a very good script for hype. You see, the audience must be very interested in such gimmicks, so if it can attract their attention, isn't it also a kind of publicity? Although Lemon dared to say such words last night with confidence, he also wanted to cooperate with the media. The effect is not much different from the purpose of Mr. Luo, the founder of Smartism Technology, to hammer his peers at every press conference. Whether it can be done or not, the momentum must be created to gain attention first. After all, many people like to see people slapped in the face, and the media's promotion is a win-win for all three parties, and there will be no loss anyway. As it happens, things are indeed developing in this direction. The audience's enthusiasm for watching movies has been very high due to the publicity and feedback from the midnight show, and now it has reached a high level. This is the endorsement of another great director. Doesn't it also have a sense of drama? Cameron's epic masterpiece, which he conceived for more than 10 years, presents a unique and magnificent scene 12 years after Titanic came out and topped the global box office. He once again dedicated a movie that attracted global attention. Variety: James Cameron brought science fiction into the 21st century with stunning visual effects. This is Avatar, a work destined to be recorded in film history. The Hollywood Reporter: no movie event can surpass Avatar. This movie will redefine what visual effects are. Le Figaro: it is announcing to the world the arrival of the 3D era. The Times: almost all the media participating in the premiere gave Avatar high praise, and at the same time, another part of the entertainment section also focused on Lyman's bold words. Naturally, these news reports also had a great impact on Disney and Universal. For some reasons, they were even more concerned about Avatar than the media. Break the record? Universal executive NASA Mellison didn't know whether to be angry or laugh. However, these two emotions also revolved around a little regret. Avatar was still very successful. A project with a high probability of making money slipped away, which was really quite tormenting and annoying, but it was just an annoyance. At that time, Universal simply couldn't come up with so much money to invest in a large-scale original project, and the board of directors' proposal would not pass. IMAX Theater got $4 million box office. Disney CEO Robert Iger's eyes widened. After a long time, he digested this information, pursed his lips and calmed down, shook his head, and sighed with disappointment. Of course, $4 million is nothing. The point is that the IMAX Theater has been sought after by the audience. This revealed result makes him uncomfortable. Although the decision to abandon Avatar was not made by him, but was affirmed by the board of directors, if Avatar is too successful, it will still have some negative effects on his leadership. In other words, he is now the person who least wants Avatar to break the box office record. Why is God always favoring him? Paramount's new executive Brad Grey browsed the data report summarized by the theater chain, frowned and murmured, "Very good. Notify the distribution department to continue to guide public opinion." Haha. Columbia CEO Michael Linton laughed. "This cooperation may be our luck. But no matter what people in the industry think, or how they mock Lyman's eye-catching topic, one thing is certain: at the end of this year, they are all patiently watching the screening trajectory of Avatar." On the other hand, the main creators of the crew, including Cameron, who have devoted their efforts to the movie, are they not extremely concerned? Even after the premiere, they still had to lead the team to travel all over the country, but they were all nervous, excited and expectant, and even afraid of setbacks and being hurt by the market. However, the thoughts could not stop the passage of time. At 1 AM on December 17th East Coast time, the market report of the first day of the release of Avatar was finally released. At this moment, I don't know how many Hollywood filmmakers were awakened by the ringing of the phone just after going to bed, and they either passively or actively learned two numbers: 36 million in North America on the first day, and 110 million in overseas on the first day. Chapter 950, a global blockbuster. With the development of the film market in various places, the first day score of over 100 million is not so unattainable. The first day score of 36 million in North America is not an exaggeration. But if it is low, don't forget that Avatar was released on Wednesday, which is counted as a weekday, and this score is already the #1 box office. According to this trend, it is definitely an extremely excellent standard. However, compared with the goal of winning the championship, the domestic harvest is not so amazing, but it is a big hit overseas. Yes, the emergence of this result surprised many forecasting agencies and those who do box office news. Why? Everyone broke 100 million on the first day, but everyone said that it was a combination of domestic and overseas. Only Avatar really exceeded 100 million in overseas regions, and the support of overseas audiences was very high, directly breaking the first day records in many regions, and raising it to a height that can only be looked up to. Upon hearing this news, Disney, which has not yet won the first place in the annual box office share in the live-action film market by hard power, could not sit still. Robert Iger immediately called several department managers. Everyone, you all know that the first day box office of Avatar. As soon as the words came out, Jeff, the vice president of production, felt sticky sweat oozing out of his palms, and his whole body was a little dizzy. Although he had felt this scene happening as early as after the internal preview of Avatar received the resources poured into the theater chain, he still couldn't relieve the emotional fluctuations when it really happened. Because the reason why Robert called them here was very simple. The abandonment of the Avatar project required a senior person to take the blame, especially under the premise that the project prospects looked very good. If it lost money, the decision to abandon it might be praised, but unfortunately, it didn't. And the question is, who should come forward to take responsibility? Of course, the shareholders will not take the blame, and neither will the main person, so it can only be the deputy, so he was flustered. What's worse is that the executive of the distribution department continued the topic. In recent days, some states in the east have encountered snowstorms and the weather is very bad. Many viewers were forced to stay at home and did not go out. Otherwise, the North American performance of Avatar would be better. Yes. Moreover, for Cameron's movies, the audience's enthusiasm for watching movies will not come and go quickly. The current high score reputation is likely to create a strong long-term market. Someone is still analyzing steadily. If you calculate it this way, it is still unclear whether it will break 2 billion, but the potential for profitability has been shown. Don't forget that, if the box office is excellent, the offline market and copyright peripherals will be correspondingly excellent. The audience of Avatar is not single, and it will not rely on a certain group to maintain high efficiency in attracting money like the Twilight series. For these professionals, through the audience feedback on the first day and specific market data, they can already analyze a lot of things. Many things, when they happen, they can naturally know what they are doing. To be more detailed, it is said that it will be jointly screened at home and abroad, but some ticket-rich regions, such as China and Japan, have been postponed until after the new year. In other words, this is not the strongest period of screening for Avatar. Similar concepts are the points that people need to measure carefully. 110 million overseas also means that the 81 regions that have been screened have contributed an average of $1.3 million in the first day box office. With such performance, the decline in the first 2 weeks should be very small, because the first 2 weeks are the concentrated income period for blockbuster box office. Just based on this, a global daily income of 100 million, it is also stable over 1 billion. Even if the decline in the third and fourth weeks is more than half, 1.5 billion is also stable, and the box office can make a profit. Even so, it is not the most ideal state. If you are optimistic, with a 2-month operation cycle, you may really break the record. Robert Iger certainly thought of these, so he looked at the data solemnly and quickly convened the company's management, including the midnight show. The revenue for one day is 150 million. Robert chewed on the number of 150 million repeatedly. Although there was no joy or sadness on his face, the wrinkles on his forehead also showed that he was not calm. However, as the helmsman of Disney, he was only thinking about how to quickly cover up the current strategic disadvantage period besides regret. After all, this would involve the intricate struggle within Disney, and he had to cut the Gordian knot and make people admit their mistakes. But, who should it be? He looked at Jeff, the deputy department head who was responsible for the production and shooting of the project, and had also participated in the shooting of 3D documentaries. Yes, he witnessed all this, but he did not give the company the confidence to judge. This was really a dereliction of duty at work. 150 million on the first day. Is the overseas box office so high? When North American audiences also saw the news of the first day of screening in the newspaper, the comment sections of major movie websites were instantly flooded with proud fans. Under the cool film reviews throughout the article, the number 150 million became popular again. Or, this is a situation that only appears in the comment section of Avatar. After all, there are not many things to talk about in Avatar. It is not as high quality as The Dark Knight, where fans are discussing the plot and characters, nor is it like Transformers, where many fans come to complain about the unreasonableness of the movie after contributing to the box office. In the comments section of Avatar, the audience's attention to the plot is rare among blockbuster movies. Almost most of the comments are related to visual effects, or complaining that they did not buy tickets for IMAX theaters. From these comments, it can also be seen that the audience group has an urgent need to watch movies, and because there are too few IMAX theaters, many viewers who have watched it plan to wait for an IMAX ticket to watch it again. It is also in this situation that the outstanding Avatar continues its harvest journey. In the North American market, on the 19th, that is, the Saturday of the first week of screening, it closed at 40.2 million, and on the 20th, Sunday, it fell slightly and took 38.7 million. After 5 days of screening, North America has accumulated 162 million. In overseas markets, after the first day of the market explosion, it directly swept 305 million in 5 days, and the global box office reached 467 million, setting a series of records again, and becoming the focus of media reports from all over the world. In just 5 days, Avatar achieved results that many movies could not achieve in the entire screening cycle, and it has become a hot topic of analysis for many box office analysis agencies. Some media even began to echo Lyman's statement that it surpassed Titanic and bluntly stated that Avatar's dominance is worthy of the first place on the list. But no matter what, witnessing miracles also requires a process, and the hot discussions outside did not affect Firefly's operation of its own affairs too much. In a blink of an eye, 2010 came, and some things were put on the agenda. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.